Okay, let's call this July 19th, 2021 Newton Falls regular council meeting to order. If you could turn all devices off or set to vibrate and stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Lord, we ask for wisdom and guidance as we begin the meeting tonight, that you help us with good dialogue as we serve Newton Falls and we represent you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Okay, if Mrs. King wants to call for the roll.
Ms. Bledsoe.
Present.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Here.
Mr. Krupp.
Present.
Ms. Braymeyer. Mr. Bariak.
Here.
I would like to make a motion to excuse Ms. Braymeyer tonight per an email we received at 11:47 this morning saying that she was too ill to attend.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, if you want to call for the roll.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
Mr. Krupp.
Yes.
Mr. Bariak.
Yes.
Ms. Bledsoe.
Yes.
Okay, passes. Public comments, they are limited to items on the agenda, name, address, 3 minutes until previously requested. For additional time, the only 10 minutes person we have is Mr. Richard Curlin.
I wanted to talk in general about a couple of things. Definitely the referendum petitions that recently, through public information, it was found out that since April 30th of this year, everyone except the people and certain council representatives knew that we were fighting that referendum. When this was done and required to give a decision, we just ignore them. I also had the opportunity through public information to read Mr. Fritz's opinion, which was pretty generic, really. The one thing that he's saying that I don't agree with, according to what we have done in the past on referendums, is that the Price Reduction Act, of which was passed by ordinance, and we did have a community meeting. At that meeting, there were questions asked whether the contract was done, whether we would need to have anything else such as a maintenance agreement. Mr. Lynch was attending that. I'm sorry you couldn't make that, Mr. Fritz. But what was said was, the sales agreement is the contract. What was the price, Mr. Lynch was asked? I know, I asked it. The price is already in there. So I'm curious, what part do the people have yet to see that was the first part that was passed? This was new and original. The ordinance was. This was the act that Mr. Lynch said was going to save us, make us $4 million. The people went out and they upheld the referendum procedure. It is not administrative. The administration cannot, by law, sell our utilities. It's a new law. Why someone would say that it's administrative is beyond me when you're selling property and utilities. And of course, again, to the first argument, there is no first act. If there is, perhaps it was passed when nobody knew it. This was, according to what was said, and I attended that meeting, this is the first opportunity we've had to have AMP pay us. So I can't understand why our city clerk, knowing all this, and after 25 years' experience, would send a letter that she objected to. And in fact, there is another referendum out from last year that is in question. How can that be? A woman so experienced and so able to let just go by. Do we just ignore $300,000 and say, well, there it is, let's go get it? You can't do business that way. You have to respond to what and the reason I know there wasn't any response is because I asked for public records. The only response was from Kathy was the April 30th asking for a determination of the ordinance. She asked for a determination of the ordinance, and our law director already gave his opinion as to the determination of the ordinance. It's just so confusing, and according to what the Board of Elections responded, they haven't heard anything. This is April 30th. We're into July. Maybe that's why nothing's been done with this ordinance. No one knows what to do. This is just a continuation of the attempt by the city, Mr. Lynch, our law director, Kathy King, and certain members of council to keep people from voting. Every time we turn around, there's something wrong. Well, you got to do it this way, got to do it that way. Even though we supply the records of the truth, it makes no difference. We just want to keep the people from voting. Ms. King's been through probably dozens of referendums and recalls. And she is more than intelligent to know what is legislative and what's not, rather than ask on April 30th, what do they think? Well, it's July 19th. They've asked formally what we think. Now, are they going to have a referendum or not? Because they were made sufficient by our city clerk. When they were sent down, their response was they are sufficient. They did not tell anyone who took the referendum and supplied the names and the organization in body. And I believe she said they are sufficient in body. Well, there you have it. They're sufficient. And I don't understand why we just can't take an opinion or take the thing and just say, we have the right to vote. Let them vote. It makes no sense to me. It's bad business to keep people from voting. We saw what occurred on the recall. You can't always do this by either exaggeration, misquotes, or just not saying anything. This is from what I understand, this other referendum that didn't get approved or disapproved or something is for $300,000. Now, I'm not sure on that, but that's what I understand. And we probably don't need the money, but you'd think we'd do something. And if there has been any response to the Board of Elections, it's not in public records. So I would say this, why aren't we as open as is the Board of Elections with public records? All you have to do is ask for public records at the Board of Elections, at the courthouse, even in Newton Falls. And you know what? It's done. They do it. Not us. Very discouraging. We can't vote. Very discouraging. Thank you. In disappointment, thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Honorable Mayor, members of council, citizens of Newton Falls.
Okay, just state your name and your address.
My name is Anna Musson. I am the appointed finance director since July 11, 2016 by the City of Council of Newton Falls, Ohio. I'm here to discuss item number 3 on the agenda. It is incomplete. is missing the bank reconciliation. But more importantly, I am here to do my job, my duty. That is what our law director, Joe Fritz, says. Anna, make sure you do your job. Well, tonight, folks, I'm here to do my job. Right now, we are in violation of a problem. The 2022 tax budget. Per Ohio Revised Code, every village in the state of Ohio, per the state auditor's office, we have a handbook. Chapter 3 talks about the tax budget. Tax budget requires a public hearing, and notice shall be given at least one publication in the newspaper, and that has not been done. Official publication has to be in a village or a newspaper in general circulation, not less than 10 days prior to the date of the hearing. At least 2 copies of the tax budget shall be filed with the fiscal officer. I have brought 15 copies for every member of council, and if the public wants to inspect it. I will go through this. But this is according to chapters 5705 of the Ohio Revised Code. The tax budget should have been passed by this city council on or before July the 15th. Today is July the 19th. This must go to the tax commission by tomorrow. Or the village of Newton Falls is now in jeopardy of losing its undivided local government funds. I'm going to repeat that. If this is not submitted, my report that I have done and worked on, to the tax commission by tomorrow, this village may lose its undivided local government funds. This community cannot lose 1 penny. Because I look at that finance director's report in the general fund, $70,000. That's extremely low. We should have a carryover balance at least $500,000 to $650,000, not in the 70,000s. And folks, our biweekly payroll is over 90,000. Now that does include the enterprise funds and everywhere else, but my also concern is on this agenda. How are you guys going to be paying for these firefighter uniforms? Yeah, they need to have them, but how are you guys going to pay for it? Our finances and fund balances keep on draining. City Council, it's your responsibility to review this. In my opinion, the finance director's report does not include the bank reconciliation. It's not balanced. It's incomplete. You don't have an expense report. And I can say a lot more, and I'm not going to. I'm taking the highway. I'm here to protect the citizens of Newton Falls. And I'm going to give the tax budget to the mayor. You guys, in my opinion, should put on the agenda, add to the agenda, a public hearing for the 2022 tax budget and pass this tax budget tonight. You're like playing the football game. You have less than 2 minutes, and you're down. Do we want to lose any money? I don't think so. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, can I get a copy of that?
Katie Carl, 128 West Quarry. Okay, I have 2 questions. Well, I'll wait until you're done passing those out.
Sorry, Katie.
Are you ready, Mr. Chair? Okay. I'm a little bit concerned that I don't know the status of anyone, nor does I shouldn't know as a concerned citizen. I believed that we had an acting finance director, and to my knowledge, no one is allowed to take anything financial out of the office. So it's my great concern that anyone would have in their home any of our city's financial records in their personal residence. And if there's anything that is of a financial to our city in anyone's personal possession, I would hope that that would be returned to the administrator of the city, not the chairman of our council, but to the administrator of the city and or the law director. That wasn't what I was going to speak on, but that's very concerning to all of our citizens of our city. Any of us that are citizens that don't know what's happening within the city, and we shouldn't know,
Point of order, Mr.
That's-
Chairman.
What's your point?
I beg your pardon.
Can she acknowledge what she's speaking on? This is the first public comment section. It's specifically about agenda items, and she didn't announce what agenda item she's speaking on. She's just, if she could clarify what agenda item she's speaking on.
It's a finance report, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Chair, may I continue? Okay. The other thing, another financial situation, while we love being able to speak to our different council members, this goes to finances also. Everyone would love to be able to reach out and talk to anyone on council. That's not given to all the citizens, that opportunity. Some people are blocked when trying to reach members of council, various different members. But it's another expense to have any kind of office space, because being an elected official, no one should have extra office space at an additional taxpayer expense in the building. Maybe time to come up and sit in the great room if it's available and not being rented out, but that's an undue expense to the taxpayers of our city. And that's undue expenses that if we have it in the budget, maybe we can put it towards something for the kids in our community, another program, or something else that maybe needs to be done in our city. Thank you very much.
Don Placer, 342 Oakville Avenue. I have a few things. First off is Katie's up here talking about all this stuff, but $72,000 in a general fund, that's worrisome. Where in the heck did all the money go? We can't meet payroll, and you're going to come up here and that's what you're going to talk about? The other thing is, all council members should have a spot where they can come into the office and go over the agenda. I don't know who made the rule, but they're elected officials. They're entitled to their office. I don't know how it would cost any money. It's an office. That's all I have to say.
Lorna Heisel, 227 North Center Street. I just want to address the office space. I think it's a great idea for council to have office space, and here's why. Safety. Because if you were to meet one of your constituents and there is an issue with that and you have an agreement and you don't know that they have an issue, there could be a safety concern with meeting them at any place besides here, which has a metal detector to get into the building. So you should be meeting people here in this building that has paid security, that has a metal detector that they have to go through for your safety and for their safety. So I 100% agree with providing council a safe place to meet with their people in their ward. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if not, we'll move on to reports. Does Mr. Zimmerman have anything for Ward 1?
Yes, sir. I was out of town all last week, so I have a short report for this meeting. Just being out of town, noticed when we came back that the street repairs, the street paving's been being done. Glad to see that was moving forward. I'm taking a walk on Sunday morning. We were approached by a resident who lives on the corner of 9th Street and West River Boulevard, Miss Ella Johnson. She was very happy with the work that was done, very happy with her interactions with Shelley and Sands that she had. Quite frankly, this is what being on council is all about, providing a service to the people and seeing the great interaction that's done with the service providers involved. I was also asked to pass this on tonight that August 1st, there's a benefit dinner for Jace Chitwood. Jace is a 10-year-old that needs a liver transplant due to cancer. Jace just turned 10. I was just informed that his tumor has grown and he's at the top of the adult transplant list. All proceeds go to his expenses coming up in the next couple months. There'll be meatball subs, salads, dessert, raffle baskets, a 50-50 raffle. Winners do not need to be present. Again, this is Sunday, August 1st, right here at City Hall. Pricing is children 3 and under for free, ages 4 to 10, $5, 11 and up, $8. And there will be subs without red sauce for people with special diets. I just urge everyone to come out and support this cause if you can. Thank you.
Mr. Zimmerman, what was the time on that? What was his name again?
Jace Chitwood, August 1st, 2021, from 3 to 7 p.m. I apologize if I didn't say the time.
That's okay. Okay, Mr. Boriak, do you have anything for Ward 2?
I'm going to hold my announcement
Okay.
until public comments at the end.
Okay. Ms. Fetzer, do you have anything for Ward 3?
Yes, I do. On Monday, I dialed into the Board of Elections special meeting and listened to them deliberate, the recall election. And then on Thursday, I also met with State Representative Mike Gluychik and a representative from the auditor's office. He was a liaison. We met here in town at Mi Amigos. That was on Thursday. And our upcoming Park and Recreation meeting is on Tuesday the 27th at 5:30.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kropp, do you have anything for the at-large?
I do, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This will be a lengthy report, sorry guys. Okay, so it's been the last couple weeks have been a busy couple weeks. So my weeks, after the meeting, the last previous meeting, I did a tour of the Village Hall with Village Manager Lynch. I was able to see inside the secure area, which most people have not been able to see, unfortunately. The space is coming along. There are very large offices. There's many large offices, and there's actually a vacant, unrenovated office, which I think maybe some people might have seen. I was able to utilize and get some work done here in Village Hall, and then unfortunately I was not able to come back and utilize that office again. And currently there's no access for council members. You can't just walk in and go to work and do village business, which is odd to me. I don't know why it's even a debate. It seems like common sense to me for village officials and public servants, people that want to do village business, to be able to come into Village Hall and utilize what is council staff. So council staff are the individuals that you see sitting in front of you up here. Their existence is to serve the members of council and help present and pass legislation. And if legislation is presented or submitted, to be able to work that legislation, reword it, to get it on the legislation, not become a barrier or a hurdle to that process. Unfortunately, that's kind of where we are right now. And then during the time while I was down here for that tour with Village Manager Lynch, I got to talk to some of the members of the office here and talk to some of the people here. And I also got to sit in on a meeting with Mr. Lynch, Township Trustee Chairman Pete Augusta, and Teresa Bartlett, to kind of be brought up to speed as a new councilman on the Scott Street Sewer Project, which I sat in. Maybe Mr. Lynch can address that a little bit more at length. So I was brought up to speed on that as best I could be in such a short period of time. I was also, while I was here for that particular meeting, I was actually informed by Mr. Lynch and brought up to speed on, brought up to his version of speed, I guess, on the finance director situation, and was presented with some I won't discuss what's in the documents, but presented with a report from Village Manager Lynch, which I asked him, about the report and about acquiring, the information and the things from that report. And there were some troubling things in there as far as how they were acquired and the knowledge of the individuals that were asked for certain submissions for that report. So that's a very not a good situation, I don't think. So that's as far as I'll go with that. I was able to attend the Forward Ministries ribbon cutting on Sunday, not this last Sunday, but the Sunday previous. Big congrats to Amber and Adam Hawley for everything that they've done, and their team as well, not just them. I don't want to just call them, but I don't want to run off the list of names. But to Amber and Adam, great job. They've done a lot of great things here in the community. That was an excellent event. The service was wonderful as well. I think that if you don't know who Forward Ministries are, what they've been doing, they've done a ton of stuff here in the community for the kids. They've worked with the schools. They've worked with pretty much anybody that's asked them to work with them. And it's been a really a great process for them. So I was able to attend the ribbon cutting for that. I personally had to leave, unfortunately, right before the actual ribbon cutting took place because I had some prior obligations and the event took a little longer than I thought it would. Big thanks to Rachel Rankin as well from the school, from the Newton Falls High School. She was there. She's done a ton of work with the school, between the school and Forward Ministries, which has been fantastic. And a big shout out to the Newton Falls Area Commerce Association as well, Pam Pretty and Tom Colosimo. And I believe Niobe was there as well, who's our secretary. She's the secretary for the NFACA. So they were actually asked and participated in the ribbon cutting, which was, again, like I said, I wish I could have stuck around for that. But from everything that I saw in the videos and stuff and on the news, it looked like it was an excellent ribbon cutting. So congrats to them, and Forward Ministries, good luck to you guys. And if there's anything in the community, if we can do anything for you guys, just reach out, and happy to help. Let's see. On Monday, July 12th, I arrived at Village Hall around 8:30 to do village business, as I mentioned. I entered the building and was greeted by the security guard, Mr. Frank Tomeno, who has become a friend of mine. He's a really nice guy. We've had many conversations as I wait to be permitted into a secure area of the building where I am supposed to be able to do village business. I asked to speak with the clerk, and I also asked to speak with the village manager. He wasn't present that morning. I was told he was at meetings, but I wasn't told what meetings or with who, and I don't believe, and maybe Ms. King, the clerk, can speak to this if she'd like. I'd be happy to ask her to speak to this on what meetings he was actually attending. She told me that he'd be out of the office both mornings on Monday and then also on Tuesday until around lunchtime. So I told her that I needed to come in and do some village business, and I proceeded to do so. She allowed me. We went back to the back into the secure area, and she went to her office, which is secure, has key codes and passcodes and stuff to get into her office. She can buzz you in, which is convenient. But during my tour with the village manager, I actually was able to locate a vacant office space, not to mention probably a 35-person conference room with a huge table and probably 35 chairs in there. Kindly donated, I believe, Mr. Lynch from his former law firm. I believe he donated those, or he told me that he donated those. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But I proceeded to use this. Once I saw that office, I knew there was an open, empty office space. There was an executive desk in there. There's bookshelves. And it's right down the hall from council staff. It's right across the hall from where I believe Mr. Fritz's, the law director's office, is supposed to be or will be in the future. Again, if anybody hasn't seen, which most people haven't seen the offices or seen anything back here, I'm hoping in the near future to be able to kind of show everybody, what's going on behind closed doors. So anyway, I went in and sat down and did some work. I was able to, as Councilwoman Spletzer alluded to, I was able to call in and participate in the Board of Elections meeting as well. And that meeting was discussed, the recall election, of course, and setting the date that we had passed. And they actually voted 3-0 to pass that, to allow that to happen. I believe Mr. Fritz called in and spoke on his own accord. He was actually asked by one of the Board of Election members why he was there, why he was calling, who instructed him to call. He candidly spoke and said that no one actually asked him to be there. No one called. He did it on his own accord. He was not instructed by his direct supervisor, Mr. Lynch. He was not instructed by council. He did so on his own accord. So I don't know, perhaps I'll let him speak to that as well. He can address those questions. So after that meeting, I concluded the work that I needed to do that morning. I left and had to go take care of some other business. I decided to come back around 3:30 that afternoon. Again, I met Mr. Tomeno in the office, or in the front, came through the security door, came through a metal detector. Security guard, it's a full-time security guard sitting there that's, professional security guard. So of course it's secure. And I asked to speak with the village manager again. He came out and essentially refused to allow me access to the building and couldn't give me an actual reason why. He produced a security protocol, and I'm going to address that here shortly. So I was not permitted into the building. So, and as I mentioned, I called into the Board of Election. I also, this past week, I spoke, this is the next topic, I spoke at length with the Executive Director of the Ohio Municipal League, Mr. Kent Scarrett, in reference to the Lattes and Legislators event that took place on April 12th. at Robbie Lee's involving the Ohio Turnpike Commission. And the announcement, the reason I was calling the OML is because I had issue with the fact that our former mayor and former council member was seated at the head table and announced by our village manager as a active member of the OML, and that he was essentially representing the village of Newton Falls, when in fact that has not been the case since he was alleviated of his seat for Mrs. Spletzer, and according to Mr. Scarrett, and he was very candid with me, and I really appreciated his openness. He told me very clearly that once a person loses their seat or loses their position as a public official, they're no longer eligible to be a member of the Ohio Municipal League. Mr. Lynch knows this, I believe. Maybe he can speak to this. Maybe he didn't know this. I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth. And I'm going to assume that Mr. Waddell, our former mayor and former councilman, knew this as well. And neither of these individuals, who it's their responsibility, according to Mr. Scarrett, it's their responsibility to reach out to the OML and inform them of the lack of standing and no longer being eligible, neither of these individuals did that. So this person lost his seat in December of 2020 and was still being introduced as a member of the Ohio Municipal League by our village manager, who, again, either willfully, said that he was, knowing that he wasn't, or didn't know. Both are concerning to me. So to be very clear, the former mayor and former councilman is not and has not been a member of the OML for months and months. He's not a public official, has no public standing. He's just a resident, which, as like all of you out here, he's a resident and has the same rights as all the residents, but he cannot sit on the Ohio Municipal League or be recognized as a member of the Ohio Municipal League. So that was inaccurate. And not to mention our Commerce Association wasn't even acknowledged at that meeting. I attended this next item. I attended the Newton Falls Area Newton Falls Area Commerce Association meeting on Tuesday, July 13th, 2021 at the Holiday Inn on Route 5. It was an excellent meeting filled with discussion. There will be a Christmas in July event on July 24th at the Stone Pavilion at Community Park. I encourage everyone to stop down. I believe it's from noon until 3 p.m. If anybody can nod. Okay, so it's from noon to 3 p.m. on July 24th. Christmas in July event. I encourage the public to go down. Let's see, what else? The reason for the event is to raise funds for a commemorative statue or plaque or something along those lines to commemorate and remember the tornado that struck here in 1985. If anybody's old as me knows that I think I was 6 then, so but I do remember that. So we want to commemorate that event, so people know that happened. Let's see, next. I attended with Mr. Lynch, and I won't go into too many details, but we attended essentially an economic development meeting. I don't know if it's being labeled as such, and I've actually spoken to Mr. Bariak because he is part of the Economic Development Committee, that he was not informed of said meeting and was not invited to said meeting. So I've spoken to him, and I was not aware that he wasn't invited. But Mr. Lynch and I went and sat down with a potential economic development partner or someone who we can possibly do business with here in the community. It was a good meeting, I will say that. I won't go into any more detail about that. There were a lot of questions asked and a lot of conversation and dialogue back and forth. So hopefully as more things come out with that, if there's new developments, we'll be able to go into that. And then before the deadline on this past Wednesday, we have a deadline of 3 p.m. to submit legislation. I personally submitted 11 pieces of legislation. I take that back. I submitted 10 pieces of legislation before the deadline and 1 piece of legislation 38 minutes after the deadline, which was not included on the agenda. But neither were any of the other 10 pieces of legislation that I submitted. So I was given an explanation, if you want to call it that, from Mr. Fritz. I have not heard or spoken to or had any email receipts from him. I reached out to him directly and have not heard from him in any way, shape, or form in reference to the legislation that I submitted. So as a sitting council member, I've tried to submit 10 pieces of legislation for the agenda. Not one of them is on tonight's agenda. There is one piece of legislation on the agenda tonight that I did not write, and I will be asking and inquiring about who submitted that piece of legislation and what council person that was and who authorized the changing of the language as far as that legislation is concerned. And I'm really worried that that's going to set a precedent as far as council people setting legislation and having it basically just denied completely with no explanation and no access, as I mentioned, not being able to be into the building. I can't come into the building and talk to council staff. Council staff, unfortunately, for the last 2 weeks for me, no one will answer their phone when I call as far as getting legal advice. And Mr. Fritz is the legal advisor, council staff, for all council members, and that's in our charter. And like I said, I've not heard from him. He's not communicated with me, not answered any phone calls, not returned phone calls, not returned emails to me specifically. So that's of great concern to me. I also said I had a meeting with State Rep Mike Loychek as well. It was a fantastic meeting. Mr. Loychek was very receptive, and it was nice to actually be able to sit down and discuss the happenings here in Newton Falls over the last probably 2.5 to almost 3 years, and give a real timeline and timetable of what's taken place here, because it became very apparent to me that most people don't really have a good understanding of what's taken place here over the last couple of years in a chronological order, from event to event to event, because there's been so many things that have happened. It's overwhelming to just sit down and rehash all these different items. So it was nice to be able to sit down with Mr. Loychek and go over all those things and kind of detail those particular instances and inform him and get him up to speed on what's been taking place here in town. And he was very receptive to that. I had, let's see what else. I've received, and the last thing, and I'll finish up my report, I've received multiple emails and phone calls from residents in the village as well as the township over the last 2 weeks. I've personally responded to each and every inquiry I've received. I believe, I wrote that, and I think I've responded to every email and phone call that I've received. And initiated some sort of action in reference to each inquiry, whether by personally investigating the situation or by directing the inquiry to the proper department or channel. There's a common theme for most of the people I've heard from. They're reaching out to me because their council person has ignored them for the most part, or failed to follow through, or failed to keep their word. So this has to change. That is all I have as of right now for my report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have anything for finance?
Other than the report provided to council, I don't have anything further to add.
Okay, any questions, comments, concerns?
I have a question.
Mr. Boriak, you have the floor.
Mrs. Wolford, the information that we were presented tonight by the Mrs. Anna Munson, is this true? Is this true?
That is true, yes. That is a report that I have not created or provided.
Well, are we on a deadline?
Yes.
Whoa. My God.
Mr. Chairman, if I may be recognized.
I'm sorry.
Hold on, Mr. Boriak still has the floor.
I'm very sorry. I'm just shocked right now. I'm very shocked. I'll waive my time. I'm very shocked.
Mr. Chairman, if I may be recognized.
Mr. Crop, did you want the floor?
Ms. Wolford, could you, in the couple meetings that you've been here, I don't think we've had a formal introduction. Can you formally introduce yourself, your name, your title, your experience, your background, your qualifications?
Sure. My name is Pamela Wolford. I graduated from YSU with a bachelor's degree in science, business administration in the area of finance. I'm currently acting finance director. Anything else?
Do you hold, as far as your qualifications, do you hold all required from a finance director standpoint, or even an interim finance director standpoint? Do you hold all qualifications required as far as licensing, bonding, that kind of stuff?
Yes, I'm working on all the certifications. I am working on those, but I am qualified, I am bonded, I am.
What can you specify? You say working on, so you're currently there. What certifications do you not currently have?
Well, I'm just working on getting my memberships with different finance organizations.
Could you be specific? Like which? I'm not.
I'm
from.
sorry, I don't have it in front of me. There's 2 or 3 of them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to?
Yes, I would like to address, please.
Ms. Butts, you have the floor.
Ms. Wolford, I also noticed that in the report that you sent us this month, we are definitely missing an expense report, and we are missing a bank statement reconciliation. And something I want to go on record as saying is that last month when you sent out the financial report, you released confidential information. You released business income tax information. And I instructed the city manager to get that down off the web. But I believe it's still up there. But I wanted it to be reported on the record that you released confidential information from businesses.
Okay, is that it, Ms. Blitzer?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Zimmerman, did you want an address?
No, sir.
Anybody else want a second before we move on?
Mr. Chairman, if I could be recognized for my second.
Yes.
Ms. Wolford, is what Mrs. Splutzer just asked about confidential information being posted on our official village website, is that accurate?
I do apologize for that. That was the first time I have ever done a council report. I was going off of previous council reports that had been provided to me, and I included it by accident. That is my fault. I'm taking full responsibility for that, and it has not happened this time.
Okay, so for for the record, so yes, confidential information. Okay, thank you. Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anybody else want to address before we move on? Mr. Boriak? Mr. Zimmerman? No? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the law director.
You know what, actually, I would like to have
Want
a second address
Okay.
with her.
All right, you have the floor.
I'm specifically looking at the report that was statement of cash position. And it really does bother me that we only have $72,059.56 in the general fund. And on this report, you're showing us the receipts and disbursements. And, you know, this is all coming from line 1 of this report. The receipts are $904,594.35. The disbursements are $1.425,394 and then 32 cents. How have you been able to spend so much more than you've brought in this year? And why are we at such a low balance in the general fund? How have you been able to spend more than you have brought in, and why is the general fund balance so low?
The general fund balance is low due to, I had been contacted by multiple vendors that there were invoices that we had not received and had gone unpaid, and I paid them. They needed to be paid. They were from January. We would have accrued more in late fees than we would have by paying that invoice. And there were multiple of them.
Ms. Bletzer, is that all you would like? Hold on, Mr.
I believe when I questioned the city manager a while ago about the road pavement getting done, and we're going to be somewhere in the neck of the woods of $160-some thousand short of what we budgeted for the roads, he indicated to me that that money would come out of the general fund. If the general fund only has $72,000 in it, there's no way you're going to come up with $160,000 to pay for the roads when they do get done. Nor do we have the money to pay for the fire uniforms that we promised the fire department at the last meeting. And could you, I believe I heard Ms. Musson say it takes almost $90,000 to make one payroll. You don't even have enough money in the general fund to make payroll.
The general fund has rebounded in June.
I'm looking at a report that you prepared as of July 1st.
But that's for May. I have not given you anything for June because I'm still working on closing the month of June.
Okay. Mr. Boriak, did you want to address?
Mrs. Pam, Mrs. Wolford, is this a very high anticipated tick in the revenue to be coming in? I remember that's what Mr. Lynch said. He said we've got a real big whopping surge coming in. Is it normal, or is it way, way, way above average, or is it below average? Our monies that are coming in.
It's normal. It's normal, a little bit above average.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Zimmerman, did you want anything? No, sir. Okay, let's move on to the law director's report.
The only thing I have to report is that indeed there were 11 items that Mr. Crawford presented on Wednesday. This council is full with their packet, gave a list of what items are not on the agenda. The fact that they were not on the agenda doesn't mean that they failed forever. That means the items took time in order to be put in the proper form. And there are one or two of those items that violate the separation of powers. It was administrative stuff that the council can't even legislate on. I have nothing further to report, sir.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I could be recognized, please.
Mr. Crop, you have the floor.
Mr. Fritz, since you have not responded to my emails directed right to you, you've not responded to any of my phone calls, you've not provided me with the service of legal counsel to do my official duties, I guess we'll just do it here. Could you explain to me, I received this email in an attachment, and I believe the other council members did as well. I received this item in an attachment that was not labeled. It wasn't even specified what it was. And it actually came out a minute before the agenda was actually sent out to the members of council. And that's all timestamped. Kathy sent that all out. So this was actually sent out ahead of time. Prior to, like I said, I've never spoken to you on the phone. We've not met. I tried to come down to Village Hall and couldn't get in, and don't know if you were here anyway. But you have made a numbered list here of all the different pieces of legislation that I submitted, and I happen to have both of them here right here in front of me. So do you have both of those in front of you so we can go through these?
I do not.
Okay. Is there a reason why, as the law director, you don't have the things you need to do your job here with you today?
I have everything I need to do my job.
Okay. So you have this information so we can discuss it right now?
We can discuss it, but I may have to refer to the actual documents, which I won't have.
Okay.
I don't bring my office with me. I don't bring everything. I don't have the ORC. I don't have the full charter. So you can try to corner me in and say I have it, but the answer, Mr. Crop, is I gave you the written. If you have a specific question, I'll answer it.
Okay. Where are the things you need to do your job here now? Because this is where you work. This is your office right now, and we require you as legal counsel to give legal advice. And if I ask you a specific question, and you don't have specific things in front of you that are required to provide me with that information, that's you not being prepared to do the duty that you're paid to do, sir.
That comment is absurd.
It's accurate.
It's not.
Okay, so I'm going to go over these things, and you can explain to me specifically, even though you don't have these things in front of you, that you say you don't have in front of you, you'll be able to explain them to me legally, give me parliamentary procedural issues. You can answer those questions parliamentary. You can answer any legal issues that I have. Is that correct?
I may have to look something up.
Okay, we have time, I guess. Okay, so we'll go line item by line item, and that way I can understand exactly what I need to do as a council member, and from your position as a council staff member to help me prepare legislation for the agenda, reword it, make it accurate, make it legal, whatever needs to be done. So I'll just go right down the list. So the very first item that I submitted as a motion for the agenda for this evening is, I'll just read it right into the record. So it's motion to require all legislation submitted by council legislators to be submitted in writing, parentheses, email, typed, or handwritten, to clerk of council, village clerk, or designated alternative, and for all submitted legislation to include name of author, time, and date of original submission, as well as confirmation of receipt of said legislation from the clerk of council, or designated alternative, and all submitted legislative items will be placed on the agenda in the order they are received with the accompanying name of the original author of the item. Co-sponsors may be included as well with the knowledge and approval of named co-sponsors. You responded back with, 1, this is not a single-purpose motion. This change would modify council rules and violate the charter, therefore the motion is improper. Could you explain that and expound, and then also inform me as legal counsel of how to reword that motion so I can submit it to the agenda tonight so we can vote on it?
There's multiple items that you have in there.
Okay.
They should be split up into each individual section with regard to what rule you may change.
Could you be specific so I can break this up as we talk right now? I'll break it up into pieces, that way I can submit it to the agenda. Could you tell me exactly, specifically? If you'd like a copy, I can ask Ms. King to make you a copy and present it to you right now.
If you wish, sir, I could sit here and we could go through and I will prepare the entire document for you.
Excellent. That's exactly what I'd like to happen. Thank you for volunteering that. I appreciate it. So could you please break that up that I just read? You could break that up into pieces and tell me how to word it so I can submit it to the agenda tonight.
Mr. Mayor, this is question and answer session. This isn't a work session. All these matters can be taken care of and prepared for.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
What's your point of order?
I've asked specific questions. This is a question and answer period. I've asked specific questions and I expect specific answers. So I don't know what he's claiming, but that's my point of order. I've asked specific questions. I'd like specific answers from the law director, who's my legal counsel. That is his job. That's the only reason he's here.
Well, it is pertaining to your report, but I'm going to have to, about halfway through, cut you and have you use your second address so that I can make sure that others get a chance to speak to the law director. Continue.
Okay. Mr. Fritz?
All right.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on to somebody else, but I am going to suggest, because I've suggested this in the past for Mr. Fritz, that it probably would have been a good idea to, when you got the information from Mr. Kropp, to have contacted him at that point in time, let him know what the problem was there so that we're not wasting community's time tonight.
May I respond, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Thank you. I don't know what people think that my job is. I am not here 40 hours a week. I am working weekends and nights for the city. I do not have an office within this building. I prosecute all day, Tuesdays and Thursdays. On the paperwork that Mr. Kropp delivered would have been on Wednesday.
Tuesday, sir.
Tuesday. It would have been brought to me for any type of review. First chance would have been Wednesday. I had other city business I was taking care of. Thursday, I prosecuted all day. Friday, we sat down with our staff to go over each individual item. We did by Zoom meeting in the morning, so the packet is prepared. When council presents these, I don't just sit here waiting to take care of council's motions. I have other city business to do, which I did. So all I'm suggesting is I'm willing to sit with Mr. Kropp and go through these and put the ones that are possible into a form that can be presented to council. But to demand it and put on the show here seems a little odd to me. But again,
I'm going to tell you what, though, that's not my problem.
I understand.
No, I'm saying it that way because I've said this now for 12 months that our communication is awful. And it's very disheartening for a councilman to open up on Friday and wonder what's not going to be there. I've said this before between yourself, city manager, and whoever else is involved, that there needs to be different ways of doing this. To go after the fact to fix it, if it would have been said ahead of time, I don't know your schedule. I have a busy schedule, and so does 4 other people up here too. So I don't know what to say other than it would have been a lot better if it was done beforehand. But if he can't communicate with you outside of here, this is about the only place he gets to see you. So, but I'm going to go ahead and see if Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Boriak, or Ms. Spletzer wants to first address, and then we'll go back to Mr. Kropp.
I would like to address, Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Spletzer.
Mr. Fritz, you also included my submissions in this reply letter, and you stated that the referendums violate a separation of powers and would be in violation of the charter. And I'd like you to explain that clearly, because I find the clerk's job description in Article 3 under council. All she needed to do was declare the sufficiency and validity of referendums 2020-19 and 2021-02. She has not done her job. You sent a letter to the Board of Elections on your own accord, trying to convince them that 2021-02 is part 2 of something. You give us no concrete proof to believe that statement. I believe that both of these referendums that were done by the people need to be submitted to the Board of Elections and declared valid and sufficient, and let the people vote.
both of those have been delivered to the Board of Elections for validity and sufficiency. She did her job. And when you read the charter, also read the ORC, this council should not have the authority to direct her to do what's required of her job if it's not sufficient or not valid. But she did deliver both of them to the Board of Elections.
Why did she deliver them with a letter that you wrote, trying to declare them administrative?
Because I believe them to be administrative.
You believe them to be administrative.
No, they are administrative.
I would like you to prove that they are administrative. Send me the proof, please.
I'll put something together before the next council meeting for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Boriak, would you like a first address? Yes. Mr. Boriak, you have the floor.
I'd like to ask the law director, did you submit any kind of documentation or suggestions to planning and zoning since we've talked on the drug houses, limiting the drug houses
Did I submit something in writing to them?
Yes.
No, sir.
Why not?
Because it was orally directed to them, and they were going to put it on their agenda.
How do they know what's legal and not legal, and you're supposed to have been looking at that for 2 months? I don't
Sir.
understand that, sir.
So planning and zoning, it meets on a regular basis. In most cases, they do initial conversations with the constituents and people to make decisions on what sort of things they might want to do. They contact me and ask me to, when they get to close to a final draft, to assist in the final verification, or they ask me to come if there is a zoning variance hearing or something like that. Otherwise, they work within their own committee and council in order to proceed. So at this stage, to my understanding, if you don't believe it's been touched by the planning and zoning, I'll follow up with it, find out if it's going to be at the last meeting or not.
All right, one other question. I'm very confused. When they gave you your contract, sir, you were to be and they gave you hospitalization, they gave you, as a full-time employee, a 40-hour employee, they gave you an extra, what was it, how many months extra was it on your separation?
From the previous contract, it increased 6 months.
6 more months. And I was told that you would, on normal business hours, or if we needed something, you would be readily available. There's been a lot of times, I'm not trying to be facetious here, but there's a lot of times that I've called and I have to talk to your secretary and then nobody gets back with me. And I want to say something else too. We don't have any control over Mrs. King answering the phone. Is that what you're saying, sir?
I'm not saying anything of the kind. I've been in constant communication with the city manager, city clerk, and the staff here. I come to staff meeting every Monday morning, but for a few exceptions. I'm called on nights and weekends and on a very regular basis. I'm not sure what you're asking, sir.
Well, what I'm asking is, even if this council, sir, passed a resolution that office would be manned from 8 to 4. I have it on my cell phone. I must have called 30 times the other day and nobody ever answered. Where was somebody to take Mrs. King's place? We don't have a right for her to follow our directions when we pass a resolution. We passed a resolution on that. Somebody would be here to answer that phone. Let alone, I had 2 constituents call me about very serious problems. I couldn't get a hold of anybody, Mr. Lynch or Mrs. King, all day long. Something's wrong here, sir. And we don't have any, why did we pass the piece of legislation in if we don't have any right to direct the employees to do what they're supposed to do?
The ordinance you passed, I'm vaguely familiar with it. We have since we moved to this building, I believe a new telephone system where it's a menu system to get to various offices. I believe the phones are generally manned, but again, you're asking an administrative question, not a legal question. I don't handle the phones.
Mr. Boriak. Mr. Zimmerman, do you want to first address the law director?
Yes, sir. Just real quick, please correct me if I'm wrong here, Mr. Fritz, but I believe that the timeline when Ms. King turned these referendums into the Board of Elections, she turned them in with a note saying that you need to tell us, here's the signatures, tell us the signatures are valid, and that give us the opinion on whether this is correct or not. They then responded with an email saying, we cannot tell you if it's referendable or not. That is what you need to provide us. So that's when you provided your opinion saying that this was an administrative act, and that's what the board is acting on. Correct, sir? Correct.
It was in response to the Board of Elections receiving the petitions.
Thank you.
Is that all you have?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Croft, did you want to move forward on that?
Yes, please. May I have the floor? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fritz, back to our line of questioning that we were dealing with. So if you would break down those different motions for me so I can put those on the agenda.
Again, you wish to do it here? You want to schedule a meeting right now? We'll schedule a meeting if you want to meet next week.
Okay, so Mr. Fritz, since this is a quagmire, this was intentional. It feels like to me that the fact that I've submitted legislation and have not been able to reach out to you, when you gave your reasoning, you just gave what I consider excuses for why you're not available, and then you turn around and contradict yourself and say that you're open and available to communications with all the members of council staff, evenings, nights, and everything else. But when I send you a professional email, a courteous email through proper channels, and request you to do what you're charterly obligated by charter to do, which is provide me with legal counsel as a member of council, and you don't do that, what am I supposed to do? What's my plan of attack? How should I go about this to get a hold of you?
Why don't we schedule a meeting right now for this week and get those that can be put on, a motion put on at the next council meeting?
Mr. Fritz, how does that change, how does that answer my question about this previous week? Because I submitted these for this agenda tonight, not for next week, not scheduled an appointment. I was under the impression, are you able to do the job as counsel, as legal counsel, as law director here in the village, or are you not available? Do you not have enough time, or are you not available? I know you were available for the Board of Election call that you weren't asked to be on. That would have been a perfect time for you to send me an email to let me know that these things wouldn't be on the agenda, or to return my phone call, or to even call me and set up a meeting, or like I said, there's multiple ways. Are you saying that you are so busy you can't respond to an email? Is that what you're claiming?
I was.
Okay, but then you also turned right around and said that you're also available for council staff, not council, but council staff, evenings, weekends, et cetera. Is that accurate?
Yes, primarily Mr. Lynch, and I communicate at least once or twice on a weekend, much to my chagrin.
So the fact that we have, and this has been talked about and discussed on council floor previously, there was even attempts to change the times of submissions as far as legislation. The legislation has to be submitted, I think I said 3 o'clock on Wednesday. Is that accurate, Mr. Fritz?
I don't recall. It's in the council rules.
Okay, so let's just say 3 o'clock, which I think it is, because I think it's 3 p.m. So I submitted that legislation on Tuesday, and the reason for that, the requirement for this legislation to be submitted so early prior to the agenda coming out, is so that you have ample time and council staff has ample time to go over it, go through it, and make changes or recommendations to council so that those items can be placed on the agenda. Is that accurate?
Ample time. You had 11 motions. I will tell you that in the past, what council members have done that had quantities of motions, or even any type of basic motion, they normally say that there's an issue they come up, something a constituent suggested, they present it to me, and then they give me a period of time in order to do the research, put it in a form. I usually present it back to them long before it goes to the administrative staff and ask them to review it and try to answer any questions they have, because I want to make sure what I've drafted deals with the problem that they brought to me, so there's no miscommunication there. We normally have a phone conversation or exchange emails. They're in a form that they want. Then I present it to be put on the agenda for the next time. So in most cases, it's a question where there's a courtesy from the council persons to make sure that there's ample time to make sure I'm not making a mistake. I'm not going to rush a piece of legislation and make a mistake that's more significant than trying to get legislation passed.
Okay, so you're...
And secondly, sir, when you comment about what my work is, with all due respect, you have no idea what my work is. I have cases that I'm representing the city on. We have employment issues. I have staff meetings. I'm handling contracts. It's a constant piles of paper coming through. Some days I work out of my home and the paperwork's back and forth. I'm drafting all sorts of legal pleadings on behalf of the city. I'm communicating with various lawyers and things that are going on. So the fact that for 72 hours I didn't respond to an email, that's probably because I didn't have time to respond to the email.
So aren't you paid? You're paid handsomely to do the job, everything you just described. Are you saying it's too much, or you're over? I'm confused. I guess I don't know what the reasoning or the excuses that you're giving me for not being able to respond.
I give you no excuses, sir. I'm telling you that there are 5 council members. I don't work for each individual council member. I work for council on the whole. And yes, I'm supposed to give legal advice to individual council members to make sure things are properly on the agenda. But that doesn't mean when you say, did you do I'm not done, sir.
Did you give me legal counsel this week? Did you give me legal counsel this week, as you mentioned? As an individual council member, did you give me legal counsel or advise me on how to write?
Answer the question?
Both of you, turn around! I separated you for a reason, first off. I think we've discussed this for months now. I've said it before. You know what? I'm busy too, but I can tell you what, I would have sent him a text that says I won't be able to get through all of this. Not just left it like it always does, where we end up, we get the agenda and it's not on there. You know, something needs to be figured out. It's pretty rude that on Fridays that 4 individuals here get their phones out, they look, and where's this at? To turn around and look and say, you know what, Mr. Kropp, you got 11 pieces of legislation there. There's no way that I can possibly get through this properly. You know, there's no way. What, is there 3 of them that you would really like on tonight? Is there 4? You know, or I could get through this. Some type of communication. We have 0 communication. You know, and I'm almost tempted to let him rattle on for 25 minutes because that's the only time he gets to talk to you. You know, I know that because I've been in that situation. You know, somebody else got a second. Mr. Zimmerman, Bariak, Spletzer. No.
I'm good.
All right, let's move on to the law director or the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The folks at Heritage Accord are moving forward with all kinds of activities related to the improvements over at the Heritage Accord, over at the community center. And one of the events that they're going to be moving forward with is an event where we actually close the covered bridge, and they have a meal that takes place on the floor of the bridge itself. County Talcott came in to talk about that, and they're looking at some other fundraising events as it relates to it. They've already raised money towards that goal, and I'm optimistic that they're going to, in reasonably short order, be in a position where we can have the community center open again. And in defense, to some extent, of Connie and Mr. Stoner and others in the group, the process of having those fundraising events that were planned for last year essentially got stalled by the orders of the Health Department and the State Department of Health. But it's just a very exciting thing. They're moving there. As a matter of fact, they had spent a fair amount of money already on removing all the mold. And, Your Honor, you may remember that towards, I don't know the last time you was in that building, but there were issues. As soon as you entered the building, you could detect that musty smell. So they actually had a company in there going around and spraying. They came back, they inspected it again, and even provided a written mold report, which, even though Heritage Accord is a 501c3, Mr. Law Director, I'm presuming that if it's in my office, I can consider it to be a public record, and I'll make a point of forwarding that to the rest of council so that you'll have some more details as relates to that. I do want to thank Councilman Kropp for his participation in the Scott Street meeting. We have some other meetings as well with members of the Environmental Protection Agency, and I'm very optimistic that I would say by the end of October or November, I will have all the funding in place for the completion of the Scott Street project without turning to the taxpayers of Newton Falls in order to make sure that happens. I also appreciate Councilman Kropp's participation in that meeting with a potential developer to bring some exciting new development here to Newton Falls. The County Engineer's Office had a meeting regarding House Bill 168. It was very well attended. There were probably 50 or 60 representatives of different communities from around the valley. In addition to that, we've been communing with the folks over at CSX towards some maintenance issues that we've had with CSX. Some of the grassy areas adjacent to the overpasses, we've had some problems with, and they've appointed a special representative to help us with that. In addition to that, we're asking them to provide us with some engineering reports. You may have seen on Facebook some photographs of some corroded metal, and it just makes me nervous because we all know that a train, even at a high speed, exerts quite a bit of weight on those bridges, and I'd feel a lot more comfortable if we had some engineering assurances that things were being done in a way that maintained those. Those bridges have been around for a long time, and the chief and I have had a number of discussions, and the folks at CSX, I believe, are going to be stepping up to the plate so that we can address some of those things. And Mr. Marion, happy to respond to any questions at this time. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
I do.
Ms. Fletcher, you have-
I would like you to address who Harold Young is and how many times you've had conversations with him concerning the Verlay condominiums.
You asked me who Harold Young is?
Correct.
He's the property manager for the Verlay Condominium Association. I've had, he's probably called me on the phone probably 8 or 9 times. I've probably met with him on a couple of occasions regarding different maintenance issues over at the Verlay condominiums. And he has submitted some information to me, which I'm currently reviewing in order to address some of those maintenance issues over at Verlay condominiums.
Have you discussed a road dedication?
That is one of the things that we've been discussing, yes.
Okay.
Is there anything else, Ms. Fletcher?
I'm good.
Okay, anybody else want to address with the city manager? Mr. Boriak, you have the floor.
It seems like I got a lot of calls, Mr. Lynch, about the so-called, I don't know if you, what you called it, an economic development meeting. Did you know I'm on economic development, sir?
Yeah, I've seen your name on the forms, yes.
Why wasn't I invited?
The stage of this thing is not at a stage in which I'm prepared to have any further discussions on it.
Excuse me, sir. Mr.
Yes.
Kropp was there. Why is he there and not me then? He's on economic development. You're not making any sense. You're not making any sense. It's not in the stages, but Mr. Kropp's more privileged than I am? Is that what you're saying, sir?
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything further.
I have some, as far as what proof right now do I have with the statement you just made that we'll have this fully funded? How do I know? How does this council know? What is this, a little secret? Why don't we know something about how you plan on doing this? Don't you think it would be wise to come to council or something?
Are you talking about the Scott Street project?
Yes.
I don't need council's approval if funding is coming from another source. I need to go to council to get approval from you to provide funding. But if I'm providing funding from another source, I don't have to go to city council.
What?
Okay, did you have anything else, Mr. Boriak?
No, I'm done.
Okay, Mr. Kropp, Mr. Zimmerman, do you have anything else for the city manager?
Well, just real quickly, it says on here that you had a brief encounter with Senator Sandra O'Brien. If you don't mind, can you discuss that a tiny bit?
Sure. The discussion with Senator O'Brien essentially was to congratulate her and go over the details of the meeting that we had with the Ohio Department of Development. She played an important role in us getting the $250,000 grant, no matching funds needed for the purposes of the gas tank removal and soil remediation process that happened over at Route 5 and 534. Some of you may have seen the digging taking place, and most of the discussion was about the fact that she and her staff were so helpful in helping us accomplish that task.
Okay, is that all you have, Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kropp, did you have an address?
Yeah, if I can have the floor, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you have the floor.
Mr. Lynch, in reference to the meeting with the potential development,
Yes.
Can you give an update on a discussed proposal that was to be put together? Is there a timeline on that you would potentially be putting together? Is there anything you can discuss as far as that goes? Or just a time frame, sorry.
Yeah, general time frame. I am working on a document, have been, and would expect I'll have a preliminary draft ready sometime this week.
Thank you. One last question.
Yes.
In the future, if, and I alluded to this in my report as far as Mr. Bariak's involvement with the meeting, in the future, would it be possible to include and request the invitations for any other members of the Economic Development Committee or any kind of economic development moving forward?
Yes, that would be possible.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, would anybody like a second address? Okay, Mr. Zimmerman? Okay, Mr. Boriak? Okay. You want a second address? No? Okay. Okay, if not, the few things I have to report is that I did also go to the Commerce Association meeting, and just want to give them props. Every time I go there, it's very informative, and there's always not just meeting just for the sake of meeting, but a lot is accomplished. And I want to make mention, I don't know if anybody mentioned it tonight, of Saturday, the Christmas in July from 12 to 3. There'll be a lot of food, fun, Santa, dunk tanks, and all the other bells and whistles, so I want to mention that. Myself, I've done some door-to-door work, and I enjoy doing that, getting out in the community and talking to my friends and fellow citizens. I also had a meeting with, I believe his title was the general manager over at the nursing home. Had a good conversation with him the other day, and good food over at Big D's, so anybody else that wants to invite me to a meeting. And Big D's is a good place, covered bridge, you know, Mi Amigos. Got to sit in on the lunch at Mi Amigos with the state auditor and the state rep, and that was also a great time with, as I said, the auditor, state rep, and 2 council people. And had a dinner with Governor DeWine and his wife and my wife, and it was pretty interesting. We went over some of the concerns actually in Newton Falls and Trumbull County, so that was kind of neat talking to somebody like that. And he had let me know that if I had any other concerns, he'd put me in touch with the Lieutenant Governor or the Attorney General. So it's kind of neat that I'm not on an island of my own, but we have all these other helpful resources, and that's about all I have. Do we have any additions to tonight's agenda?
Yes, I'd like to.
Mr. Bariak?
I'd like to make a motion to terminate the contract of David M. Lynch, City Manager. This shall take effect immediately.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call. This is to put that on the agenda.
Mr. Crop?
This is to put it on the agenda.
Yes.
Mr. Barrick?
To put
Yes.
it on the agenda.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
No.
Okay, it moves forward, it's on the agenda, and we'll, Ms. King, do you put it at the end or the beginning of the new business?
The end of, I typically put it at the end of new business. I mean, it's
Okay, that's fine, so that'd be the 5th item.
Sir, I would like to pass this out now. Would you like to pass this out?
Oh, okay, what is it?
Now that the motion's been accepted.
Here, I have an extra.
Anything else?
I need one of those too, sir. And I have made 2 of them up for, one for the clerk and one for Mrs. Berrymeyer that's not here tonight.
Do you have one, Mr. Boyer?
No, I don't, but I can share mine right now. Oh, thank you.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else on changes to the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Mayor,
if
I have a question.
Okay.
Should we be adding this alternative tax budget information to the agenda tonight so that it does get passed in time to be submitted?
I mean, we could vote. I mean, I don't really know enough of it to,
I need direction from the law director.
yeah, law director
Mr.
of
Fritz,
finance.
should this be added to tonight's budget?
No, my understanding, and I'll have to get the exact legislation portion, if there's a ministerial error, I want to say it's a soft deadline. Now, again, the state doesn't take it lightly, but there is a section that allows for a ministerial error and to be submitted at a later date. I'll have to check what the time limit may be, but we're going to look into that as of now.
So this is not something we need to address tonight?
I've not done the full legal research, obviously, because it's the finance department. I just found out about this evening. But while we were sitting here, I did go through and check some of the ORC. There is a section that allows for ministerial errors not to be held against the city or the reporting authority. Obviously, I would prefer it to be done timely, but apparently we have some time in order to do
We have
it.
about 30 days, 30 more days.
Mayor, may I, could we not, how long would it take for this for you to get this information, Mr. Fritz?
I'm not the finance department. You mean about the law, the amount of time?
Yes, so we don't lose this money.
I would suggest that this is close business Wednesday, I should be able to have something ready to council members.
I'd like to make another motion.
Okay.
To be added to you, that the motion that I just put up on the floor and passed, that I want it to be moved to number 1. I want it moved up on the agenda tonight's agenda.
Do that. I think you can put it there.
What's that?
I don't think there's any hard, fast rule where it
Yeah, we
goes under
can,
new
that's why I
business.
asked Mrs. King if she, we can just do that anyways, okay? So we'll put it up before, at the very beginning of new business. Okay, is there anybody else has anything for additions?
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized, please?
Yes.
I actually have an entire list. I have 10 pieces of legislation to submit for the agenda this evening. I can go through one at a time if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be fine.
The first motion I would like to submit for the agenda this evening is the motion to require all legislation submitted by council legislators to be submitted in writing to clerk of council, village clerk, or the designated alternative, and for all submitted legislation to include name of author, time, and date of original submission, as well as a confirmation of receipt of said legislation from the clerk of council or designated alternative, and all submitted legislative items will be placed on the agenda in order they are received with the accompanying name of original author of the item. Co-sponsors may be included as well with the knowledge and approval of named sponsors.
Yeah, I guess what we'll do on this is I'll ask for a motion, ask for a second. We'll have discussion on it so we can figure out what needs to be done with it. And go from there. Do we have a second to add this to the agenda? It's having named sponsors, et cetera, on the legislation.
I'll second that.
Okay, Ms. Spletzer. All right, let me see what I can write on here. Okay, any discussion on this?
My discussion is per the opinion by Mr. Fritz. It's going to be the same for
Excuse me.
every single one of
Excuse
these.
me, Mayor. This would just be a motion to add it to the agenda, so it wouldn't be a motion to actually pass it yet.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if we wanted discussion on it to see if at the time when we're looking to add it, if it's appropriate, because there was obviously a reason it's not on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a parliamentary inquiry?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz, what is the proper procedure for additionally adding this to the agenda or an agenda item? What is the proper way to, should we just roll call vote this now to add it to the agenda?
Correct. Essentially, the actual motion itself comes up before council under the new business section.
Thank you, Mr. Fritz.
Okay. All right, so if Ms. King could call for the roll.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Ms. Spletzer?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
No.
Mr. Krupp?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes. That'll be item number 6, legislation, name sponsor, et cetera.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Yes.
I have a second item to add to the agenda, an agenda change. This is going to be a motion to require the village manager to permit access to Village Hall for all elected appointed Newton Falls Village Council members during normal operating hours, including but not limited to passcode issuance, key card access, office usage, secure internet access, hardwired phone access, and any other items deemed necessary by council to perform village business and sworn duties such as research and preparation of legislation.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll.
Ms. Spletzer?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
No.
Mr. Crop?
Yes.
Ms. Peria?
Yes.
Okay, moves forward, it'll be item number 7.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Yes.
I have a third item to add to the agenda of this evening. I'd like to make a motion to rescind any, all powers and/or authorities granted to the position of village manager via ordinance, resolution, and/or motion of council not expressly written in the Newton Falls Charter.
Okay, did you make that motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll.
Mr. Zimmerman?
No.
Mr. Crop?
Yes.
Mr. Peria?
Yes.
Ms. Switzer?
Yes.
Okay, passed, and that'll be item number 8 under new business.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Yes.
I'd like to move to add another piece of agenda item to the agenda. This is a resolution declaring council chambers, specifically as the chamber that we're sitting in right now, that's formerly the sanctuary, or, sorry, Kathy, I need to figure out exactly how to word this. I tried to specify this particular address in this particular room as 612 West Broad Street, formerly known as the sanctuary. And that any meeting held in any other manner or at any other location, physically or virtually, example Zoom, must be approved by a majority vote of council.
Excuse me, any other room, or I didn't understand what.
Would you like me to read it again?
Yeah.
Okay, it was a resolution declaring council chambers, specifically as the chamber, formerly the sanctuary, at 612 West Broad Street, the one we're sitting in right now, and that any meeting held in any other manner or at any other location, whether it be physically or virtually, as Zoom is an example, must be approved by a majority of council, a majority vote of council, sorry.
Okay, do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll.
Mr. Crop?
Yes.
Mr. Peria?
Yes.
Ms. Switzer?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
No.
Okay, and that passes, and that'll be item number 9 on new business.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Yes.
Am I permitted to ask the law director a parliamentary question again in reference to a reprimand? Mr. Fritz, I wrote a motion to verbally reprimand yourself for exiting the regularly scheduled council meeting while still underway without being formally excused by council. Is there a proper way for me to word that to have it applied to the agenda this evening?
If you wish to reprimand me under my contract provision, my suggestion is the council retains outside counsel to make a decision how best to proceed.
That's your suggestion, but it's not a requirement?
It actually would be required under my conflicts of interest with regard to my law license. Can I tell you how to do something?
Could you refer me to, so that's what you're saying, because it involves you, I need to reach out to another attorney to ask if I can reprimand you? Is that what you're stating?
That would be my suggestion, yes, sir.
Okay, I'll move on in light of the fact that I may need to reach out to another attorney or someone else in reference to this. I would like to, if I have the floor, this will be a motion. I'd like to make a motion to include an agenda change, or an addition to the change to tonight's agenda. And this is a motion to orally reprimand Councilwoman Sandra Braymeyer for failing to attend a regular village council meeting, the previous village council meeting, and the date eludes me, I'm sorry.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, 1, 2, if no second, then that one dies. Okay. Do you have anything else, Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chairman, if I have the floor?
Yes.
A motion, I'd like to motion or move to add a motion requiring Village Manager Lynch to require all employees and other public officials, including but not limited to Village Council and the Mayor, and all employees, including but not limited to Council staff, including the Village Manager, Law Director, Finance Director, Village Clerk / Clerk of Council, Chief of Police, Zoning Inspector, etc., to use official email accounts. And I have, and Kathy, we spoke, I asked you specifically about where our servers, what email account, and I have @newtonfallsoh.gov as that email address where.
Yeah, except I believe we checked with our IT people today, and I'm not sure any of those go through our server. I thought the oh.gov did, but I was told it doesn't. It's the oh.gov is a government server, the cloud that it goes to.
Okay. Okay, can I strike that? I'll just strike that from the parliamentary inquiry. Mr. Fritz, what's the proper way to rescind what the motion I'm trying to make as of right now?
You don't have to, it was never seconded.
Okay.
Just one.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I have the floor.
Yes.
A motion, I'd like to move to add a change to the agenda. A motion requiring any all official meetings of council, whether they be regular, special, emergency, caucus, town hall, etc., to be broadcast live, displayed, shared, embedded, and/or disseminated via all official platforms of the Village of Newton Falls, including but not limited to the official village website, which is ci.newtonfalls.oh.us, the official village Facebook page, official village YouTube channel, and any other official platforms council deems necessary and/or useful.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Bariak,
Yes.
Ms. Fletcher,
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman,
No.
Mr. Crop.
Yes.
Okay, and that's item number 10 in new business, isn't it, Mrs. King?
Yes.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I have the floor.
yes.
This will be my last move to add a motion to change tonight's agenda. This is a motion to require any all official meetings of council, whether they be regular, special, emergency, etc., to be audio, video recorded and transcribed verbatim.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Ms. Fletcher,
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman,
No.
Mr. Crop,
Yes.
Mr. Bariak.
Yes.
Okay, and that's item number 11 for new business. All right, let's see what I have here. Approval of previous minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the July 6th, 2021 regular meeting?
So moved.
Okay,
I'll second then.
okay.
I'm sorry, who made the first?
So moved.
Mr. Crop
Crop.
and Mrs. Spletzer was second. Do we have any discussion on this? Okay, if not, call for the roll.
Mr. Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mr. Crop,
Yes.
Mr. Bariak,
Yes.
Ms. Fletcher.
Yes.
Okay. Minutes approved. Public hearings. Ordinance 2021-06, if Mrs. King wants to read that.
An ordinance authorizing funds to the Newton Falls Joint Fire District for fire uniforms.
Okay, do we have anybody that wants to weigh in on that? Name, address, 3 minutes.
Katie Carl, 128 West Quarry. I would ask that you follow through with this and do your due diligence with helping out the fire district. This is a separate entity, and they're their own body, not part of the city, the township. It's part of the whole community. For all of the citizens, they do for all of us, they take care of everybody. Mutual aid and everything, and this is a service that can be helpful to our whole community because they also provide mutual aid to outlying communities. And it's already been stated that the money is there and the reports aren't in yet for June and July. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, if not, then we'll close the public hearings, unfinished business, same ordinance 2021-06. If Mrs. King wants to read that.
An ordinance authorizing funds to the Newton Falls Joint Fire District for fire uniforms.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, if no discussion, as soon as Mrs. King is ready, I know she's
ready.
writing.
Mr. Crop,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Ms. Fletcher,
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes.
Okay, Ordinance passes. Okay. New business. If Mrs. King wants to read, what is Exhibit A, terms and conditions in its entirety.
I believe you have to make the motion to put it on the floor first.
Okay.
So moved.
Mr. Crop.
No, I'm sorry, I need a specific motion on the floor.
What?
I need the specific motion on the floor.
It's motion to terminate contract to David M. Lynch, city manager, and that's what I'm saying, if you can read it in its entirety, and we'll have a motion, see if somebody makes the motion, somebody seconds it.
Okay, okay.
I'll make the motion, and you need a second to read it on the floor?
No.
No, she'll read it, and
Okay.
that way that we know what we're making a motion for.
Motion to terminate the contract of David M. Lynch, city manager. This shall take effect immediately. Exhibit A, terms and conditions. Number 1, employee David M. Lynch shall have no contact with any employees, nor is he to have any conversations with past or present employees regarding anything related to the business of Newton Falls. Number 2, employee David M. Lynch shall have no contact or conduct any conversations with any attorney now employed or has been employed in the past by the Village of Newton Falls. No legal matters involving Newton Falls will be discussed. Number 3, employee David M. Lynch shall not adversely communicate with any current or past contractors, nor anyone else concerning any business for the Village of Newton Falls. Number 4, employee David M. Lynch shall not interfere with the operations of Newton Falls. Number 5, employee David M. Lynch shall return all village/city property he has in his possession and/or acknowledge of that was gained while acting as city manager, to include but not limited to: A, city car must be returned with keys no later than 12 p.m. Tuesday, July 20th, 2021. B, all keys to any city building or any other vehicles owned by the Village of Newton Falls. C, pager, cell phone, tablet, computers, printers, badges, security codes, and all passwords. D, any furniture purchased by the Village of Newton Falls. E, all books, manuals, papers, or notes concerning the Village of Newton Falls. F, all of the above materials are returned immediately or by a time designated by Mayor Kenneth A. Klein. 6, employee David M. Lynch shall not make duplicates of any items, to include but not limited to the use of any materials owned by Newton Falls or developed while being employed by the City of Newton Falls. And 7, employee David M. Lynch may only contact Mayor Kenneth A. Klein or any other person designated and approved by Mayor Klein.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion, or we just call for the roll?
On the legal matter?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. This is the first I've seen this. I want to advise council, he's a contractual employee, and that the termination of his contract has various consequences that may come to this council, but I've not had an opportunity to advise one way or another. There's a payout on this matter. I'm not sure finance is able to even take care of that issue, and all this type of discussion should be an executive session, not on the public floor, because we're dealing with specific personnel issues with an employee. And I guess finally, I want to make sure everyone knows, since it was not on the agenda early on, that you need a supermajority in order to pass the matter.
That's not true. That's not true.
And that there's specific times in here that wouldn't be infected if it's set on a different date.
It needs a simple majority per Administrative Code 12102. Just keep it down. So if there's no additional discussion, we'll go ahead and call for the roll if nobody has anything to say.
I have one question for the law director. Should this motion pass tonight, will who will accompany the city manager to start getting his stuff tonight?
I don't know.
The chief is, he's here.
For the chief of police and another officer?
Again, sir, I'm disagreeing. Unless you get a 4 vote, I don't think you're going to get this passed. But again,
we don't need a 4 vote. Administrative Code says that it's a simple majority. Unless somebody else shows us otherwise, it's what it says. Okay, if that's the only discussion we have, we'll go ahead and call for the roll.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Yes.
I have a question as well, and I direct that at Mr. Fritz. He's made mention a couple times now of the fact that there's some kind of a majority or supermajority that needs. Could you provide us with the location of where that comes from, please, or cite the section of the charter or the administrative code where you're saying that from, please?
I believe you're going to find it's in the Roberts rules that when,
In the charter, sir. Where's it at in the charter?
it's not specified in the charter.
Okay. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
And Robert's Rules also says that the bylaws, the Charter Administrative Code supersede that, so go ahead and call for the roll.
Mr. Bariak?
This is for what? What?
It's to pass, hold it down, it's to pass the exhibit that you gave us.
Is this to pass the motion to terminate?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Fletcher?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
No.
Mr. Crop?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, before we go on to new business number 1, we have the chief here. Are you going to come forward and do your duties, or?
That's what I'm supposed to do.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Lynch, you're now a citizen, so if you could move into the seats there.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't think that passed.
You passed.
So I don't recognize it as having been
Well,
passed.
if you don't recognize it, I'm going to
I
call the
don't.
sheriff.
The law director's indicated it hasn't passed.
It
You understand you have a different opinion, but the law director has a different opinion.
Well, that's nice, but shh, don't anybody say anything. I want him to show me where it didn't pass. I have the Administrative Code 121.0 says, any addition to the prepared agenda governing the meeting shall be approved by a majority vote of council. Majority vote is 3. I realize what you said in Robert's Rules of Order, but it also says the Robert's Rules of Order has the purpose to ensure a meeting that's fair and efficient. But your own bylaws, your own charter, your own administrative code, etc., supersedes the Robert's Rules of Order, so it passed.
Again, if I may, the section you read about adding to the agenda, you need a majority to add to the agenda, not to pass the motion. When you go to the charter, it is silent on how to handle things that were attached. Since there's no prior notice, it's designed so that members of council with a slight majority cannot take advantage of the ones that are in the slight minority. So then, since it's silent in the charter, there's nothing in the ORC, you go to Robert's Rules of Order that
What did you
indicate-
see? It's silent in the charter? That's what you said? It's silent?
Correct. There's nothing in there that says how to handle something added to the agenda within our charter.
Yeah, I know there's nothing. That's why it's a majority. We don't make things. It passed.
Mr. Chairman, again, I don't recognize that it's passed.
It's passed. We're going to the next item.
That's fine, but in addition to that, there's a termination provision in my contract, which you have not exercised.
It's a majority of...
No, in my contract, passed by this council, there's a termination provision that requires certain things be in place before you're permitted to terminate. And that contract is signed. I have a signed contract right now.
Section 11, paragraph A says a majority vote of council can terminate.
I'm talking about the contract.
Okay.
You all know what the contract says.
Right now, before we get all crazy here, keep in mind this is a council meeting. I'm the head of council, and right now we went through, this is voted on, this was a majority of council decision, so you'd have to sit over there. Your position has been removed. It is what it is.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yes.
I'd like to bring to council forward the fact that the contract that Mr. Lynch is referring to and referencing is a contract that was passed via emergency. And in that contract, it states very clearly in the section underneath where it was passed. In the charter, it states that when something's passed via an emergency, whether it's an ordinance or anything else, it has to state specifically what the act or what this specific emergency item is. Mr. Lynch's contract, nowhere in his contract or in the ordinance that's passed, states any reason whatsoever, any specific reason for the emergency passage. Therefore, per our charter, that's a violation of our charter. So that contract is null and void anyway. Based on simple charter language. It states very clearly in our charter that when an item is passed via emergency, it has to state specifically in that ordinance that what the specific item is, why that item is passed as an emergency. And Mr. Lynch, if you could pull out your contract or pull out that specific ordinance, I believe it's 2020-37, I think is the actual ordinance itself. If you can show me in that ordinance anywhere where it specifically states what the emergency reason is for the passage of that as an emergency. I'd like to see it and read it, please. Otherwise, that contract is null and void. Per our charter, it's a charter violation. Mr. Fritz, if you could speak to the fact that if we write a contract that violates our charter, is that a good contract? Or if it's written in violation of our charter, it's null and void, correct?
Okay, well, either way, discussion on this is over. The vote is passed, it's a majority. If Mr. Lynch wants to come back afterwards with an attorney or whatever, but all the terms to Exhibit A have passed, so his position here is terminated, and he'll have to get with the chief, which will get with me to figure out how all items will be exchanged by noon tomorrow. So we're going to move on to motion appointment for Mr. Kropp, Vice President. So,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, again,
Point of order, you haven't been recognized.
okay, can I get recognized?
no, I mean, you're as much of a citizen as Mrs.
Point of order again.
Mrs. Hans or Mr. Klein or Mr. Copeland. So,
May I be
mean,
recognized, Mr. Chairman?
No, you could sit over there. We're going to move to the next bit of business. What would you like, Mr. Zimmerman?
I would like to ask, are you not considered a member of council?
Yeah, why?
Okay, majority of member of council, including you, makes 6 people. Majority of 6 is 4.
You know what? Hold on. Before I laugh.
Thank you for clarifying that for me, sir. Thank you.
You know what? What happened on April 14th meeting? I wasn't, you don't pick and choose. They're voting members. I vote whenever there's a tie. There wasn't a tie.
Yes, sir, but there are differences in the chart. There are differences. It says,
You don't have the floor.
it says majority.
You don't have the floor. Don't speak, or there's the door.
You already gave me
I'm
the
not
floor.
going to play.
You gave
and
me
I
the floor,
answered your
sir.
question.
And I'm going to try to answer
you
your
say
question.
it again, and you're going to go.
And I'm going to try to answer your
Chief.
question that you asked me.
Chief. Go. Chief, get him out of here. Tried to be nice.
Chief.
And Mr. Lynch, you can sit over there. Get Zimmerman out of here. And ask for him.
No, guys, behave. Come on, have some class.
Okay. Chief, sir, were you collecting keys and things like that to the building now?
Yeah, I got to move tomorrow.
Okay, but you know what? I want the keys to the building tonight, and I want a guard, a police officer, could be Brian Four, whoever on duty, outside to make sure nobody comes in and out of the building tonight.
We have it on video.
Well, I need security of some type. I don't want to have to sleep here myself. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. Under new business number 1, if Mrs. King could read the motion number 1.
Which will actually be number 2 under new business now, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Motion to appoint Brian Kropp as Vice President of Council.
I make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and that isn't going to pass tonight because it needs a supermajority, and you have 3 of you here.
We only have 3 members of council here.
Okay.
Ms. Blitzer?
Yeah,
Yes. Mr. Kropp?
Yes.
Mr. Faria?
Yes.
okay, is that of council? We got 3 people here. How does that work on a supermajority when you got 3 people here?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
I would suggest, sir, that if Mr. Zimmerman has left, that you have a supermajority of the members here.
Okay.
It would pass.
All right. I'm just
Parliamentary inquiry,
making sure.
Mr. Chairman. Parliamentary inquiry. Parliamentary inquiry for the law director, for the parliamentarian. Can I ask this particular motion, as it was added to the agenda this evening, can you explain why it must pass by supermajority and clarify where that also is from and why?
Because it's already been voted on, that position already been filled. So if you're changing something that's already been passed by this session, you need a supermajority. It's not a notice issue, it's a previously passed. position.
Is there something I can cite to reference that where it state, I'm not familiar with someplace where it states if something's passed and a majority of council can't pass it?
It's in Robert's rules.
I'm sorry?
Robert's rules. I don't have the exact rule number in front of me.
So as far as our charter is concerned, when it says our charter, we have the right to elect our vice chairman and we basically have all rules. It states in the charter that we're allowed to elect our own officials, the vice chairman is one of those positions.
If I may have the floor.
Yeah.
I want to caution all of council. Charter is the ruling device. When it does not specify, we go to the ORC. If the ORC does not specify, then we go to the Robert's rules. That's how we design the steps on how to proceed. So if it's not in the charter and it's not in the ORC, we use Robert's rules. So I want to use the word silent, everyone gets all worked up. Well, it doesn't say it in the charter. The charter by itself doesn't work. You need to have other things to supplement it to make the procedures work properly. If the ORC does not provide it, then you go to Robert's rules. And Robert's rules indicate notice provisions are important, so all members of council have fair notice of what's going to be on. So if it's added to the agenda, that would need a larger supermajority vote. If it's already been passed by council, you're removing an act of this council and a prior act within this session, then it has to be by supermajority. Again, it's in Robert's rules. I can't quote chapter and verse.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, next item for business, which I guess is number 3, the motion to engage discussion with council.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Council regarding providing office space for occasional use by city council members as needed.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Bariak, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may have the floor?
Yes.
I am curious as to who placed this motion actually on the agenda, because I didn't write it personally, and there's no sponsors I'm aware of. I would personally like to give the floor to the council person who actually wrote and authored this legislation and submitted it to the agenda, because it wasn't me. So I would like to, as this is currently written, this is not, that I'm aware of, submitted by an actual legislator. So if it's placed on your agenda, it wasn't placed by me or any other sitting council members. I've tried to get an explanation, if at all possible, and Mr. Fritz could speak to this, or we're already in a motion.
May I respond, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
At the staff meeting regarding putting the agenda together on Friday, Mr. Lynch was making some sort of arrangements to provide office space. So I wanted to have this on here so they can have an open discussion to find out what the needs of council may be and make arrangements for space to be available. Now, I'm not privy to where or what or how. I just know that he said he wanted to put this on here so we could have a discussion about it. It was not necessarily in response to yours, but it may have been. But and again, I remind council that the administrative staff has the ability to put things on the agenda.
So there's a separation of administrative and legislative, so we can't do things administratively, but the administrators who are not elected officials and are hired employees can do legislative action? Is that correct?
We can place it on the agenda. We can't pass it.
So they can write legislation, they can write ordinance. So Mrs. King can write an ordinance and submit an ordinance that permits, in order to walk into Village Hall, that you have to walk in on your hands, and if you don't, you can't come in. She can write an ordinance and submit that to the agenda? Is that accurate?
She's part of the staff. If you want to make it absurd that, I guess so, but council would have to pass it. It has no legal effect. It's just on the agenda.
So anybody that works for the village can just submit legislation without any kind of...
No, sir. It's the finance director, law director, city clerk, and city manager. That's the administrative staff.
And what authorizes them to write legislation? Since they're administrators, they're not legislative. What permits them to submit legislation, not just prepare? The charter specifically says help and assist council and the mayor in preparation of the agenda, which is kind of a sticking point where I haven't been able to get people to help me specifically place items on the agenda since we're legislators. But instead, we're having administrators, without communications with legislators, submit their own legislation that's not what the legislators are actually submitting. So you referenced earlier about submitting things or calling in or writing whatever. Instead, I made it real easy and actually wrote it all up real nice and submitted it and didn't get any response. And then a motion that looks very close or similar, somewhat similar, to what I wrote is now on the agenda, and none of the legislation that I wrote was previously on the agenda. So I just want to clarify for everybody out there, you're saying that as legislators, we can't control administrative behaviors, but administrators can basically perform legislation and submit legislative pieces to the agenda. Is that accurate?
No.
So you just contradicted yourself completely.
No, I did
You just
not.
said that administrators can place items on the agenda.
May I have the floor?
Yes.
You're picking an example, trying to make a logical inference that it goes to everything, and that's not true. First of all, the charter allows the city manager to place members, things on the agenda. And I believe it's in the charter.
But could you state where that's at in the charter? I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're making claims that you're not supporting. You're just making claims. Where in the charter specifically? Because I have the charter right here in front of me, the whole thing. I have the whole charter right here. And I'd be happy to pull up wherever you think that this is that says the village manager or the city manager's position can place items of legislation on the agenda. Again, I can read it from memory. It says that the council staff is there to help prepare legislation with the mayor and with council. Nowhere in the charter specifically. And you keep mentioning specifically in the charter, you've also said on council floor that if it wasn't specifically put in the charter, we should have put it there. Well, it specifically says in the charter that the village manager can help and the council staff can help prepare legislation. It doesn't say anywhere specifically.
Mr. Kropp, your time's up on the first address.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Bariak, did you want an address on this, or?
Only thing I know about this is that the ex-mayor had a key to the building, had an office upstairs. He could come and go as he pleased, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whenever he wanted. It was his office. And now this says here, occasional use. Well, this gets to be that who's going to say how much we're allowed in there? Mr. Kropp, I'm going to go ahead one. Council should be allowed in at any time and have an office space to conduct the people's business.
Okay, Ms. Spetzer wants to use the restroom, I believe. Mr. Kropp or Mr. Bariak, do you want to a second? Because I don't assume that it's going to pass, but.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request, can I request a short recess while Mrs. Spletzer is indisposed?
Yeah, she's coming back.
Okay. I don't have anything further, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Spletzer, do you have anything on this motion?
No, thank you.
Okay, if Ms. King could call for the roll.
Mr. Kropp?
No.
Mr. Bariak?
No. No.
Spletzer?
No.
Okay, motion fails.
Number 4 would be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the Finance Department May monthly report and attachments as presented.
Okay, do we have a motion? Okay, the motion is dead because
Did she read number 4 on the agenda?
yeah, this is number 3 on the agenda.
Oh,
She wants a motion to acknowledge the recipient of finance directors.
okay.
Okay, do we have a motion? No? Okay, well, motion fails due to lack of a motion first.
Number 5 would be a motion to have the city manager request the state auditor of state to conduct a performance audit of the village and report back to city council within 1 week of obtaining this information as to the costs involved and other information pertinent to this request.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion?
I make that motion.
Mr. Bariak?
I would like to amend that motion.
Okay.
So you have to have it on the floor first, please.
What's that?
You should have it on the floor before you amend it.
Okay. So somebody has to make a second and during discussion.
Oh,
Second.
okay. So, second.
Okay. Okay, discussion. What did you have, Ms. Spletzer?
Wait, we've got to bring it to the floor first.
Yeah.
It is now.
Yeah, it is. Kropp seconded,
Oh, okay.
Bariak first. You have the floor.
I would like to scratch the city manager requesting, and I believe this should come to the Administrative and Audit Committee.
Okay, what was that again, Ms. Spletzer?
instead of it reading motion to have the city manager request,
Yes.
it should read motion to have the audit committee request the auditor of state to conduct a performance audit.
Okay.
And to report back to city council within 1 week. So yes, we no longer have a city manager, so this needs to be handled through the administration, audit, and finance committee.
Okay.
We're going to take a motion on the amended right now.
Yeah, hold on, let Mrs. King get that written
Okay.
down.
Was there a second?
Yeah, Mr. Boriak first, Mr. Kropp seconded.
Thank you, sir.
You ready for the motion to amend?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Bariak?
Yes to amend.
Ms. Switzer?
Yes.
Mr. Kropp?
Yes.
Okay, it's amended, and is that now on the floor?
As amended?
Okay, any discussion?
Yes. I put this on originally. I want the people to understand there's a difference between a forensic audit, there's a difference between a audit, and there's a performance audit. More generally, if you want to look it up, Google it up or whatever, performance audit is to see how your tax dollars are being spent wisely or not, and where the money's been going and how we're handling what we're doing. And I think we need this. It's been a long time coming, and that's why I sponsored it.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if no other discussion, Mrs. King could call for the roll.
Ms. Switzer?
Yes.
Mr. Kropp?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Okay, passes.
So then we're going to the motions that were added. So number 6 would be a motion to require any and all legislation submitted by council legislators to be submitted in writing, email typed, or handwritten to the clerk of council, village clerk, or designated alternative, and for any/all submitted legislation to include name of author, time, and date of original submission, as well as confirmation of receipt of said legislation from the clerk of council for designated alternative. And all submitted legislation items will be placed on the agenda in order they are received, with the accompanying name of the original author of the item. Co-sponsors may be included as well, with the knowledge and approval of the named sponsors.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on this?
As I suggested, this motion is going to be modified council rules, and council rules have to be modified by ordinance. It would have to be in ordinance form, it would have to be presented and have 2 readings, unless there's an emergency for whatever reason. So it's changing council rules. It's changing actually, I think, 2 different parts of the rules. It's kind of a double statement, but bottom line is it's a motion here, but it should be as an ordinance. And if Mr. Kropp wants to meet with me sometime this week, we'll get it in the ordinance forms so we can present it at the next meeting. Thank you, sir.
That would basically be to amend the current ordinance, correct?
Correct. It's an ordinance to amend the prior ordinance, so the council rules are being changed.
Okay, you understand it?
Yeah, I do. Can I make a motion to amend this motion to an ordinance?
Again, we're still going to have, if I may have the floor, sir.
Yes.
We're still going to have you're doing 2 things. There's a timestamp and then methodology. I think it's prudent that we get this in a form that we're clear in the council rules. I don't want to make council rules any more cloudier than they are now. I mean, if you do it by ordinance, you have to do an amend by ordinance. You're going to have 2 readings, and you're going to have yes, supermajority, or change the agenda.
Mr. Fritz, if I may, if in reference to if I were to table said motion and sit down with you and work out ordinance forms, would they then be required, if they're presented on the agenda in a timely manner, they would not require a supermajority to pass, correct? They would just need a simple majority?
Correct. We get on the agenda, there's no notice problem. A simple majority would pass the changing of the council rules.
Mr. Chairman, if I can make a motion to table this.
I'll second it, Mr. Kropp.
Wait, let me parliamentary inquiry. Mr. Fritz, what is the proper methodology to pull this from the table tonight as it's just read, to sit down and reorganize this as an ordinance? What would be the proper procedure?
You could table it, but you're only tabling the motion. My suggestion is you remove the entire motion, and you and I will put it in a form for the next meeting.
You guys just redo it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull this motion from the agenda.
Okay. you don't need any motions or anything like that since he sponsored it, correct? It's just gone. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Fritz.
Okay, and whatever.
Number 7 would be a motion to permit access to Village Hall for all elected/appointed Newton Falls Village Council members during normal operating hours, including but not limited to passcode issuance, key card access, office usage, secure internet access, hardwire phone access, and any other items deemed necessary by council to perform village business and sworn duties such as research and preparation of legislation.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this? Did you want to weigh on this first, Mr. Fritz?
Again, sir, as I suggested, I believe what you're looking at is an administrative decision with regard to, if it goes to employee safety, what sort of bonds are with council people and things like that. I would suggest that the item itself, I'm not opposed to. I just think the methodology was just to be a little bit clearer in how we proceed and allow the administration to figure out what's the best way to make sure we're complying with all laws of the state of Ohio.
Oh, I mean, we're going to have to look at certain things to make sure that there's not 3 council people that want to use the thing at the same time, such as a sign-off sheet. And, you know, I don't know. What did you say about the other employees?
Well, again, because someone, I mean no offense to elected officials, because you're elected doesn't mean you're bonded and have the ability to go in.
Yeah.
I mean, criminal background checks, those type of things that may be necessary. There should probably be some sort of specific rules in place that allows who's in there. Also, I want to make sure we have no violation of the sunshine law. If we're using a room where you're saying you're signing off, providing a desk where all 3 or 4 people use it runs into some risks, and I'm not quite sure what they are, sir. I haven't had a chance to research what other communities may do. But there are some other issues that are attached to this that's not automatically seems like quite as simple. I'm not trying to cloud it, sir. I'm just suggesting there's other things that have to be put in place regarding the safety of our employees, safety of our records, and things like that.
I would know, could I have the floor, please?
Yes.
I highly doubt that there would be 3 of us in there at a time because we all know council rules. I take an offense to somebody telling me that I might be in here to steal something or do something criminal. I'm an elected official, sir. I don't know who you're not dealing with some Joe Blow out on the street that comes up to be prosecuted. I take offense to that. Mr. Waddell had an office. He came and went as he pleased. In the back door, he had a key from what and he came through anytime he wanted. He had his office. I saw him there many a weekend working. Now, what about the safety of the court? Who thought about that? I'm willing to work with you, sir, but we're going to have to start doing things fairly around here and not, you know, just because we want to do something.
Mr. Fritz, is there any response, or you want me to move on?
No.
Okay. Ms. Spetzer, did you want to?
No, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Fritz, in regards to this motion as well, you made reference to sitting down, scheduling a meeting. I want to make sure that these motions, the way they're presented and the way they're delivered, are correct and accurate, which is why I did reach out multiple times to try and find out what the status was of my submissions and never heard anything back. So if I can get some assurances that I'm going to be able to communicate with you and we can work together as far as submitting legislation and getting things properly placed on the agenda in a timely manner, I'd be happy to remove the agenda items that I have so we can sit down and go over these and make sure that they're placed on the agenda correctly, worded properly, legal, and standing, so that way they can last for whether it's ourselves that are up here on council floor, whether you're here on council staff or not, but the people that come in the future aren't held up or there aren't barriers and barricades to try to do village business. So if I can I get an assurance from you in some way or shape or form that we'll be able to sit down and work together and work these legislative items out and get them on the agenda moving forward?
I can't speak to your schedule, but I can make time so you and I can get together and try to get through as many of these as we possibly can before the next meeting. I believe comfortably we can get them all. The ones that need to be on, there's a couple you and I need to discuss, probably I suggest should not be on, but we'll do that by agreement. But I assure you I will make time in order to schedule with you to go through these and try to get them informed for the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Fritz.
We can try to schedule you before we leave here tonight, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Fritz, I would like an appointment as well.
Sure.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to remove the items, the additional agenda items that I've placed on the agenda tonight, in lieu of sitting down with our law director, our legal counsel, and wording these properly and correctly and accurately, make sure they're right and just, and will stick. That way, like I said, when we are no longer council members, that the people that come up here will have what appears to me, what I think is common sense things in place to be able to do village business the right way. So I would, if it pleases the chair, I'd like to remove all the additional agenda items that I've read off to you, Mrs. King. Thank you, Mr. Fritz. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Public comments, they are open to non-agenda items. So if you want to speak, give your name, your address in 3 minutes.
Katie Carl, 128 West Quarry. The first rule in your city council rules of conduct and procedure, general rules, all council meetings, you're supposed to go by Robert's Rules of Order. It's right here. Robert's Rules of Order. I don't know if any of you have read your council rules, and then your council rules are in our charter, our community. They're in our charter. You know, we have a wonderful community. We do. We have great people here. We have wonderful people that work together. We want to help our businesses. But you wouldn't be able to tell with what's been happening here. The lies, the rumors, the cutthroat things that have been going on.
Point of order.
The absolute nonsense.
My point of order is making accusations.
Okay, I was not making accusations of anybody up here,
Well, you
sir.
said something's going on, miss. Please clarify that then.
Well, there has been, sir. And it's real obvious. A council member was thrown out tonight. Illegal vote was made.
He didn't have the floor, and it wasn't
Pardon
an
me?
illegal vote. Get your facts straight. He didn't have the floor.
Sir, per your own council rules, it
Yeah.
was.
You have to read it in its entirety. Robert's
Okay,
Rules of
all
Order.
council meetings shall be conducted in accordance with the city charter, the applicable laws of the state of Ohio, and unless otherwise herein specified, the rules and procedures outlined in Robert's Rules of Order are interpreted to be used as an orderly means to conduct city business and not as a methodology in order to hinder the process.
Right.
And that's what we
And
do with
so
them.
that's also, can I finish, sir, without being interrupted again by any of you? So it's also in your charter in its entirety and with additions also. So it's again, a shame that you aren't listening to your attorney either. And we have a wonderful city. We have a wonderful village with a great community. Yes, we do. And I just ask that you remember that and try and work as a body of council and work with the people that we have.
Anybody else?
Julie Lemon, 2750 East River Road. I'm going to say it and try not to cry, because I honestly did not expect to see Mr. Lynch get fired, but it's been a long time coming, and I, along with others, Tracy, Patty, Ashley, Jim Lonatsu, I can never pronounce his last name, but many of us have been victims of Mr. Lynch's harassment, for lack of a better term, and I personally am going to sleep better knowing that he's gone. The damage that that man has done to this city, it's time for some peace of mind, because you know what, Ms. Carl, you're right. We have a wonderful community here, and I'm personally excited to see it continue to move forward. It's already doing that because the community is standing together. And I like to see council put Ms. Munson back to work. Is she a tough cookie? I hear she is. Does she demand professionalism? I don't blame her. But you know what this community does need? Her award-winning skills on our finances. She's more than capable, and she's highly qualified. And I ask that council make sure she returns to her duties as soon as possible. Thank you.
Tracy Hurst, 613 Ophelia Street. I did have some things for Mr. Lynch, but fortunately I won't have to go through those. I do have a concern, Ms. Wolford. It appears, and you've admitted, that you were not aware of a major deadline that could have major consequences that could affect the entire village. Why is it that you don't know, that you weren't aware of this deadline, and what other deadlines may have been missed? And how do we know, how can we ensure that future deadlines are not going to be missed? Do you have a procedure to follow? Do you have a calendar? I know I do at my work on when things have to be done, when they have to be submitted. So I would hope that, I think it's a huge concern, and I think it needs to be addressed that there's not a confidence level that the financial duties will be done appropriately and deadlines are met, and I think that that needs to be addressed. Second of all, we were talking about a HIPAA violation. Mr. Lynch commented on how severe that could be. There's also something called a PI violation. It's personal information. Of course, I had it pulled up, and now it's gone. So basically, you cannot disclose personal information, which you did, which could be a huge legal liability. And it may be, I don't know. So those two things right there are a major concern to me as a citizen, that I would not trust my finances at this point with this lovely lady. I think it's a huge concern. And releasing personal information is just as bad as HIPAA. Thank you.
Chelsea Harper, 128 West Corey. Thank you for stepping up and for stepping into that position, because obviously it wasn't very easy. Okay? Obviously, things were left a bit of a mess for you, and I just want to thank you for stepping up, and I'm so sorry that people are attacking you for doing so. Okay? Totally not your fault, because just like anybody else out there, I'm pretty sure that nothing was given to you outlined exactly what you needed and exactly what deadlines were due. Not your fault. Okay? Mr. Bariak, the drug houses in this city, you actually get money for those. You get money for those people who go there to get better. Okay? Not all of them are terrible, and half of those guys, they're actually pretty amazing. Okay? Because I've hired quite a few. And they actually work out really well. They spend their 30 to 60 to 6 months here, and then they go home. But you know what? They go home clean. They go home with a better peace of mind and a better mentality. And Mrs. Spletzer, sometimes it seems as though you're reading off of notes. I'm watching you guys take the charter and put your words to it, and then if someone else comments on the fact that this is what the charter states, but because it goes against what you state, it's wrong. Mr. Zimmerman was trying to even out these votes because no matter what he did tonight, everything was going to pass. Everything.
Let's keep it down.
You guys keep talking about new faces, but keep hiring the same ones. You guys keep talking about new movements, but keep stepping backwards. If you want new, then get new. Act new. Don't fall into old behaviors and patterns, which is exactly what's happening. Exactly what's happening. It's the cycle of insanity.
Okay, everybody
Anyway,
keep it down.
August 1st is the benefit for Jace, if any of you are going to come. Hopefully council decides they're going to.
Anna Mustin, been a municipal finance director throughout the state of Ohio for over 20 years. And never in my life have I witnessed a tax budget never passing. I'm going to give you Ohio Revised Code sections, and council, please write them down. And I suggest Joe, please do so as well. I'm just here to help. I don't want our community to lose money, and we're about to do so. That's critical, guys. Ohio Revised Code section 5705.30, 5705.31, 5705.34. Municipal finance directors throughout the state of Ohio have two organizations, GFOA, which is a Government Officers Finance Office Association, and there's the Ohio Public Treasurers Association. I'm on the board. I have done my training. And there's a lot of training involved. I have certificates and certifications and licenses. I have insurance bonds. I never filed for personal bankruptcy. There's integrity. There's a lot involved. But ignorance is no excuse. That's what the first thing we're taught as in municipal finance. This is crucial. I have read Chapter 1305 of the investments inside and out. I know Chapter 5705 inside and out. First day on the job, that is what you're required to do. So folks, let me read this. County Budget Commission. County Budget Commission includes the Trumbull County Prosecutor, the Treasurer, and the Auditor. So that's Adrian Bibiano, if I'm saying his name right. So the tax budget is supposed to be passed by this council, this legislative body, on or before July 15th. It's July 19th, folks. So then after council passes it, it must be submitted to your county auditor, which is Adrian Bibiano, on or before July 20th, which is tomorrow. Unless otherwise, we don't pass it, it is a failure to meet the deadline, which is a loss of an apportionment of the undivided local government fund, distribution for the next calendar year. Well, I just went to a conference and we had a whole presentation. It was a Geauga County auditor was there, and we had somebody from Columbus. And they explained this in detail, folks, that if you don't pass it, Graceville Township, Newton Township, Bloomfield Township, Mesopotamia Township, all the areas, Niles, they would love for you guys not to pass the tax budget, because guess what? That's more money in their pocket. Period. And I'm here with my heart and soul for Newton Falls. You guys need to do the right thing. There is no errors in the tax budget I presented tonight. I've been doing it for 20 years. I can live and breathe and eat this stuff in my sleep, trust me. I love this. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. I have the passion, and I know what is needed and required. Therefore, if you guys do not pass it tonight, you are going to need an emergency meeting tomorrow. And I highly recommend by noon or something, and I will explain it in detail. It's typically 4 pages. It has a summary page with my signature because council appointed me finance director. First page is about property taxes. It takes care of our general fund and our police pension fund. So please look at page Schedule 1. Schedule 2 is all of our remaining funds. You have to say, well, how much carryover balance we're going to have, how much revenue we're going to have, how much is available to spend, and then you have to predict how much is going to be spending for the encumbrances. And the last page is very critical. It's our bonds. Sets the tax rates. So we don't have any outside millage for property tax. We only have inside millage. Inside millage is impacted by the mortgage revenue bond, Series A and B. That is with USDA that I've been trying to refinance for years because it's at over 4.25 interest rate, and there's basically close to $4 million that we have to figure out how to refinance. There's the electric system anticipation note that we go through the Ohio Treasury OMAC program, that before all this, I actually submitted the application to the state of Ohio and got it refinanced. And lastly, with controversial of last year, we have the 2020 various purpose bonds, but this city bond is not included because that money did not get released by Huntington Bank. It's only for the park fence and Medley sewer. So I am available for council if you have any questions. I'm here to help. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any comments?
Just to address a few things. In 2018, there was a meeting held. There were 4 councilmen present. 3 councilmen voted on this in 2018. Mr. Waddell was our mayor. And it was ruled that we had a 2/3 majority because a councilman, they did not count the empty chair. It was the total amount of membership present. And the only time that our mayor is counted as a member of council, and that also was ruled by Mr. Fritz and Ms. Sopkovich, is when the committees are named. That's all. Other than that, we have 5 people on city council. That's what the charter says. We had 4 people today. 3 people were present. That was enough for a quorum. 1 person was not present. 2/3 vote of 4 would be 3. That's something to think about. But the reality of everything that we've been talking about is this. We're talking as usual, and it seems like we do this all the time with the administration spending money to put off something that's going to happen. Mr. Lynch is going to lose his job. Whether or not you have an emergency and call for an emergency, this is it. Whether you call for a special meeting, but he is going to lose his job. I think what you've done tonight is proper according to our charter. I believe that. Now, as far as the contracts are concerned, that's a different matter. That would be a legal situation, and I'm sure Mr. Fritz or our other attorneys, whatever, could handle that. He's quite capable on that. But 2018, we ruled a 2/3 majority of 4 would be acceptable, and that was 3. Mr. Waddell was there. And Mr. Fritz, you did do that. Ms. Sopkovich reaffirmed your opinion on that. So not only was it a majority, it was the word supermajority, which is not in anything. It's not in Robert's rules, and it's not in our charter. There's no such thing as a supermajority. It's 2/3. Only 2 times in our charter is anything more than just a majority needed. There is 1 time for 4/5, that's with the charter. And the other time is 2/3, and I believe that's dealing with emergencies. And as far as the difference goes, do you know how many emergency ordinances we've had since new council? None. And before that, there were emergencies every single meeting. This is an emergency, this is an emergency, this is an emergency. So there are changes. That's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom Colosimo, 4196 Carson Salt Springs. I'm speaking on behalf of the Commerce Association. I'd like to ask council to please put a motion on the agenda to give businesses the electric discount they were promised last year and set money aside for possible interest-free or low interest-free loans for businesses that are struggling in town, and put money aside for beautification of their downtown. I also would like to see a motion to add 2 city employees for maintenance beautification for neglected areas in our town. And myself and Pam would be more than welcome to sit with you guys and discuss any of this. Thank you.
Patty Hans, 3890 East River Road. I just want to remind everybody that we are having a party on Saturday, a Christmas party. A former graduate of Newton Falls, Jack Cusick, is going to be our Master of Ceremonies. Those of you that don't know Jack, he was drafted twice by the Chicago White Sox as a pitcher and is kind of a local sports hero here. Our own Mayor Klein is going to be a participant in the dunk tank, as well as school teacher Mary Ann Donnelly. Let's see, who else? Oh, our Judge Vigorito, Tessa Spletzer, Mario Cantala Mesa, Trumbull County Commissioner, Bill George, our electric superintendent, and a few others. It is free to the village as well as the township, free food, games for kids and adults, and we'll have a DJ and a lot of fun. So come out and celebrate. And this is all sponsored by the Commerce Association. Thank you.
You okay, Mr. Fritz?
Andrew Fritz, 2464 Brandywine, Warren, Ohio. At the last meeting, I had a family emergency. At the time, council was going through their final comments. I hear wonderful things about the city, and I think there's a lot of things about the city that are wonderful. But I got to tell you, as I'm walking out this door, they may not be here this evening, but there are people that were saying, as I'm running to a family emergency, I turn to Mr. Lynch and says, I have a family emergency, I have to go. My wife's in trauma dealing with something not here in town. And I get people saying, look, he's getting out the door. Look, don't even come back. That's part of the city too. When asked where I was, a member of this council was told I was in a family emergency, and he left. Another member of this council decided that, even not hearing what the issue was, that it's not very classy and professional not to get permission to leave. That's the city you live in. I want to make sure you all understand that too. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if no other public comments, closing remarks, we'll start off with, let's see where we're at here. Mr. Bariak, Ward 2.
Yeah, just a couple of things tonight. I don't want it to get confused that I'm against rehabilitation. I have quite a history of rehabilitation myself, and I want to help these people all I can. What my position is, we need to limit them. Now, every time I turn around, there's another property being bought. Truly, folks, it's an issue with property values, and we don't want to be, that I've had a lot of people come to me about it. We have to put a limit on them. Not run them out of town, not be against rehabilitation, but put a limit on them. And I've asked Mr. Fritz to work on this for a month and a half or 2 months. We'll see what gets done. Now, the other thing I want to comment on, I want to piggyback on the Christmas in July Saturday. It's going to be a heck of a good time. The only other thing that I can say tonight, I'm not going to throw any stones around, stones at anybody, but I feel that this council is trying to take a new direction, which is open and transparent government and make people accountable for what they do. Now, sometimes you can forget people, and I can understand that, but sometimes, you know what I mean? Somebody doesn't get forgotten. I can guarantee you one thing, I would appreciate being asked to go to these meetings. I would at least appreciate it. That way I wouldn't feel or have it in my heart that maybe I did get slighted. I don't know. I'm not pointing the fingers at anybody. I would also like to say to the mayor that if we need to have an emergency meeting tomorrow night to to appoint a interim city manager, and also to, I think there's a couple other issues with the contract about paying the money.
You want to do this too?
Oh, and also, yes, also excuse me, could I read that, please? The alternative tax budget information, we need to pass that. So I would be, I don't know about my other council members, but I would be for even an emergency meeting so we can get some things that I think are desperate taken care of.
I don't know if we can have more than one item on an emergency meeting, can we? No.
Oh, that's right. A special, I mean,
It's going to be 72 hours for
well,
special.
then I think it'd be more imperative that if we do have an emergency meeting, to appoint an interim city manager.
Well, to be honest with you, I was going to wait until my reports, but I was going to call tomorrow, put in for Friday. It would be a special, not an emergency.
Okay.
So we would be able to do the interim. We would be able to talk about a couple other items.
I would hope that our department heads could handle it for a couple of days then, unless I hear pertinent other information.
I'm going to be through here each day, so if there's a need, they can.
And I want everybody to, especially all the employees, to know that I was told I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. I don't feel that's right. I'm afraid to say hi or good morning. I think we have to go a different way on that too. If we have nothing to hide and we're honest, tell the truth, what's wrong? Thank you.
Ms. Spitzer?
Yes. I also have dealt with this issue. I've had several calls come in from my Ward 3 constituents about the drug house issue, because Ward 3 seems to be where the majority of them are, right there around the Charles Court area, and then there's at the lower level of Superior and Woodland Street. So I've had several calls from my constituents about the rehabilitation houses, and I did take it a step further. I spoke with Mr. Stimpert and asked him if this is something that planning and zoning would at least put on their radar and start doing some research, maybe find out what other communities have done that have been successful. So I have approached the drug house or rehabilitation situation through Mr. Stimpert. And the last thing is, I've got a Park and Recs committee meeting is on July 27th, and that is also the day for the recall election. So July 27th is a big day in Newton Falls.
Okay, Mr. Frog.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be real brief here. First, I'd like to address Mr. Fritz in reference to the family emergency. I think I can speak for myself. I can't speak for anybody else, but I personally was, hopefully you never took it as a personal attack or question of professional courtesy. I can absolutely understand and have empathy and sympathy for a personal situation with a personal emergency, and I can appreciate that. And I think everyone up here can appreciate that and respect a need, for family comes first. I think everybody out here can understand that family absolutely comes first. I think any of us, in this, not even in just that situation, but in all situations when it comes to council, professional courtesy, I think, is something that's very, very important. As you're walking out of the building or running, with your head on fire to get out of here because something's important, and I totally appreciate that. A simple, may I be excused, Mr. Mayor, may I be excused, I have an emergency. I don't think anybody up here is that callous or that cold to not understand, we all have these personal situations, and we're all human beings, and we all have family and people that we care about and we love. So I wanted to address that first, and I hope that everyone here, everyone up here on council staff will understand that moving forward. We're human beings. We don't need to be callous and cold towards each other. I think just a little bit of professional courtesy was all that was asked for. And that's, like I said, I can only speak for myself, and that's all I was referencing. As far as some of the other comments tonight about how council is operating and how, what we can expect moving forward, I think change is something that the people in this community have wanted for a long, long time. And how we carry ourselves moving forward, professionally, with courtesy, asking questions, having dialogue, working together. I mean, I think that phrase got said quite a bit tonight. And I know I referenced, yourself, myself, working together. That's all I hope for as a council person. And I think that's why the mayor appointed me to this position. That's why I've been so heavily involved, even when I wasn't an elected council person. And just like all of you that are out here in the crowd that have been here, but paying attention and staying up to speed with things. That's all we want to do is try to change some of the situations that we've been dealing with and do things professionally and have a dialogue and work together for the betterment of the community as a whole. I think that's ultimately what the goal is. We have to get there. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's going to be a transition period, but I think moving forward, we can do that. I really do. I'm very hopeful, and I wouldn't be up here. I wouldn't have wanted to be up here or accepted the position if I didn't believe that. And I really, truly do. And that's the plan moving forward, is to work with anybody. It doesn't matter whether it's you, Mr. Fritz, or Mrs. King, or Mrs. Wolford, or Ms. Musson, or Mr. Lynch, or whoever replaces Mr. Lynch, et cetera, et cetera. It's not about the people. It's about the positions and what we, our obligations and our duties for those positions. If I'm an at-large councilman, there's going to be somebody who's going to come after me. There's going to be somebody that comes after all these people, but the positions are what are important, and what we do and what we stand for and how we carry ourselves. And we need to be setting a precedent, setting a standard for the community to see. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the only thing I have is a couple of small things. I do, Mr. Fritz, want to throw out his head of a council apology. I think there was a little confusion there. I know that I think each individual here feels that your family, as well as anybody else's family, comes first, and that wasn't handled right. I do apologize for that. Changes we have, transition that we have in our community, I think is important. And we do, as different individuals here spoke tonight, well, this is a great community. I don't hide that. I would rather bring my kids up and raise my family no place else. And some of the things, I'm going to tell you what, there's tough decisions that are made sometimes. And I've been asked sometimes, why would you be here? Why would you be there? Well, you know what? I mean, like I said, tough decisions to be made. We're working in a way that, yeah, there are some things that need tweaked, some things that need rework, some changes from before to, not just for council or the clerk or the law director, whoever, but every business owner in this community, every citizen needs to feel respected, cared for, and I don't know, feel like a tiger, I know in this process that we have going on right now, there's a lot of touch and go. There's a lot of, I'm going to be asking for a lot of advice outside of here that we do things properly. And I do know, and according to the terms here, that if anybody, department heads, citizens, whatever, anybody else in here needs information, you can contact me until we get an interim person put in. And I do know that we're going to be putting together a citizens group, you could say, of different individuals to vet city manager candidates. That way that the community is involved in who's brought in here, and that we do things correctly, that it'll be Newton Falls that picks their guy, and then we'll take a look and make sure and vote and do things. So that's, I'm just going to say, bear with me. I'm gonna be here in the morning to make sure the building's open up properly, make sure everybody's all right and business as usual until we get back rolling again. With the vote tonight, we didn't need it to be. I mean, I showed that a simple majority was acceptable, but if we looked at it, and we were, I guess, blessed, so we didn't really have to argue tonight, that we did have a 75% vote. We had 3 out of 4, just like earlier when Mr. Kropp, and that's why I asked that, when he was appointed as the vice by a supermajority, 3 out of 3. So we did have the supermajority tonight, so we can all leave here united, knowing that everything worked out well. And then the last thing, I am going to send an email out in the morning to Mrs. King and Mr. Fritz for us to appoint, and this will be for Friday, to appoint an interim city manager. The item, and somebody have to give me the information on it that Hannah had talked about, and Pam had talked about. I don't know what that was exactly, the passage. You know, somebody will have to give me information on that.
Performance audit.
What is it?
A performance audit.
No, not that.
Not that.
You guys were
Tax
talking
budget.
about, you know, so we'll be talking about that Friday. Tax budget, passage, okay. And then I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to be just super transparent here because there's the big, large elephant in the room or whatever. I don't know if we want to go into an executive session between council and the law director to talk about our finance situation, finance position, or if we do it Friday. What is your thought, Mr. Fritz? Would you want to sit down in there with us for a short amount of time to...
If I'm willing to go into executive session, Mr. Mayor, I will not be available on Friday, but I cannot go into an executive session if Ms. Bussin is included.
What's that?
I cannot go into an executive session if she's included.
Oh, yeah, she doesn't have to be. I need direction to say, hey, where do we stand? What's going on here, or whatever. Well, yeah, I know. And there's not going to be a story. I just need to know legally, and then we can have himself or whatever get back with you on it. I just need to know, okay, because I don't want to sit and be a do-nothing, but we're not going to sling any mud or say Ms. Bussin did this or didn't do this. You know, and it will actually be, if you guys don't mind, a very short...
I don't think we can do that tonight. It was not on the agenda when it was published.
Okay.
If it's going to be on the agenda for Friday, then we could do it for Friday. But today, it was not on the agenda that was put out to the public. So the public, at this point, has no idea that we would be going into executive session to discuss personnel. Mr. Fritz, am I correct?
Council has the right to add to the agenda.
Yeah, you could, if all three of you voted yeah, then it would, just like we did with Mr. Crop, the vice. Or we could wait until Friday.
Excuse me, you can't do it Friday at an emergency meeting. Or are you going to call it as a special meeting?
That's right.
Are you calling it a special or an emergency?
Special, because it'll be...
Special, you're okay. Emergency, you cannot.
Do you want to just do it Friday?
Friday is fine.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to be available on Friday. I have prior obligations. Unless we were to motion or move to do it via Zoom, because I won't be present. I won't be physically able to be here for a meeting.
Sorry,
so unless we can
I'm actually out
make
of
a
town
motion to do it via
Friday
Zoom.
The one thing we can do here is, I'm going to tell you what, I can, well, it's beyond making a motion to add to the agenda now, so I could add to the agenda to appoint an interim tonight, but I mean, I don't believe we can do that because we're...
Mr. Crop, are you tied up tomorrow night?
I'm unavailable for the remainder of the week, actually. This is my last, I'm going to be out of state, so I'm not going to be physically present.
Is it possible at this point in time in the meeting to add to the agenda the appointment of a interim city manager?
With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, I don't, the answer is maybe. It's like, it depends on who you're naming, how you're naming it. Is there going to be a contract? Is there going to be, I'm not trying to, again, keep the calendar.
There wouldn't be a contract. There would be, I guess it would be, you could call it a contract, you could call it a stipend in addition to his current salary.
So be a present employee that we already have?
Yes.
Excuse me. There's actually an ordinance out there that gives an additional stipend to an interim city manager.
Does the charter indicate if we don't have an interim temporary basis city manager, there's nothing in there that laid it out. If they didn't originally name one, and there's none been named by ordinance, correct? Yeah. I believe, sir, that based upon what you have, you could probably survive having an interim employee named as an interim city manager and do it at an open session. But again, does that person know they're going to be interim city manager, and have they accepted the position?
I
Some
heard,
steps.
somehow I heard, you know, I don't even remember how, but I don't know if somebody can make a motion then to bring in William George as the interim city manager at a rate of $250 a week on top of what he presently makes.
Isn't there an ordinance that already gives them that money, though?
Yeah.
There's already an ordinance that gives them that.
Gives him what?
Yeah, the pay if
Gives them an additional $5 an hour.
Okay, all right. If
I'll make that motion.
Then Tessa Splitzer's making a motion that Bill George, William George would be the interim city manager until a permanent one is brought in. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we got a second. Roll call.
Mr. Crop?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Ms. Spletzer?
Yes.
Okay, so passes, and I suppose, and I don't know what we want to do about the is it tax budget?
The tax budget.
The alternative tax budget.
Well, you know what, I'll still call for it. You know, you've got the two of you, and we got two other council people that aren't here right now, but it'll go out to them, and, you know, hopefully one or two of them will show up. You know.
Can we pass this tonight?
At this stage, I can't answer the legalities of whether or not she has the proper forms prepared and ready to go. And having said that, it would, again, you talk about notice provisions. There's no notice to the public on this. When you ask about executive session, we go to executive session because there's no act taken as part of the executive session. If I may inquire, Ms. Wilford, is the paperwork available?
I've never seen it, so I don't know.
Would you like a copy?
No, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what we're voting on, so if you don't have the paperwork filed.
I haven't had time to review it.
Okay, I'm gonna call for a special meeting Friday. I'll send out information. I know you won't be here, so if I send it out to you, you can just let me know again, just say, hey, I won't be around, but I'll call for Friday for that purpose.
I would rather pass this tonight, that way it could be submitted tomorrow and it won't be late.
I would, if there's a way it could be done, it's just not looking like, you know, I don't know how that.
I would like to have Mr. Zimmerman involved in this so he doesn't say he was left out. I don't see how he would go against something that's going to cost this village citizens money. I don't see anybody going against that.
Okay, and, all right.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Sure.
And this is with all due respect to both of the people that are handling finance and stuff like that. Myself personally, I know this needs to get passed, and it's not a lack of confidence in it in any way, shape, or form, but the idea of trying to push this through, like pass it, I know it's time sensitive, I understand that, but to vote yes on this without even having the person who's sitting in the chair now, like I said, I know there's disputes and that kind of stuff, and that's going to have to be handled, but the simple fact of the matter is the person who's acting right now hasn't viewed this at all, and it's kind of over my head as far as that, and I'd like an explanation or to kind of understand it better. So as far as comfort level of voting on something like that is, I know it's a time sensitive issue, but I just wanted to kind of clarify that. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. So tonight I'll be, or in the morning, I'll be sending out for a meeting for Friday then. And that's probably it. So do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Roll.
Bariak?
Yes.
Spletzer?
Yes.
Crop?
Yes.
Fingers in it.
Kenny.
Except you think I mean, I get it.
Don't count the empty chair. We had super majority. We don't count the empty chair. We had a super majority. But that's just another argument for our favor.